The story begins in a forest, where a bright light is seen. A man, trembling in pain, says he can't feel his leg, which is injured with 3 objects stuck in it. Suddenly, someone appears running towards him, shouting in desperation. The man with long hair quickly approaches the injured one. The blonde asks him where the others are, and the long-haired man responds with a choked voice that they are all gone. Terrified, he screams that everyone was finished off by a monster. The bearded man replies that this is impossible, as their average level was 40, and they couldn't be defeated by a crazy, naked person. Unexpectedly, the long-haired man is hit by 3 darts, making him feel terrible immediately, and out of nowhere, a huge explosion occurs. The guy who had been hit falls, completely charred, while his friend trembles in fear, unable to understand anything. He shouts, asking who the hell did that. Soon, a figure appears with a sinister aura, and the warrior asks who he is. With a bizarre look, the creature asks the same question aloud. Sometime later, in a sinister castle, a battle scene fills the atmosphere. A young man, injured, places his hand on his abdomen and remarks that he took a lot of damage. This man is the battle god, Damien, who receives a notification saying that his condition is abnormal, as his character has fallen into a state of weakness and will have his stats reduced. Other notifications appear, saying that his HP will decrease, and he won't be able to use any abilities. Damien wonders about the number of abnormal states he's receiving in that game. Soon, another abnormal state notification appears, warning that he will enter a petrification state, causing his character to slow down. He spits, visibly hurt, and thinks that not even the Saint Magnus or the immortal High Celestial could heal him now. Suddenly, another knight appears, asking how he is still standing. This is King Arthur, leader of the Demon King's expedition. He comments that Damien is like a cockroach and congratulates him for still being alive. Damien charges at him without thinking twice. But suddenly, Arthur uses a powerful magic with his staff. He smiles as he strikes the battle god and asks how he's feeling. A notification appears for Damien, warning that his stamina is below the limit and he may be logged out of the game. The king stops his attack, and the young man asks why he is doing this. While the expedition leader sneers, someone appears behind him and begins casting a spell with their staff. Notifications appear for King Arthur, warning that the Lord of the Abyss, Abraxas, is increasing his mana. Another notification appears, informing that Abraxas is trying to use the super regeneration ability, and yet another says that he is attempting to use the 7th style Tao Demonic. Arthur turns around, irritated, and comments that it's a shame, as things were getting fun. Releasing a powerful energy with his staff, he asks how he dares. Activating his multi-level Climate Reversal Kingdom Destruction ability, he attacks, enveloping the entire environment with the supreme energy of his skill. Damien contemplates that, no matter how many times he has seen that ability, it is still incredibly impressive. Suddenly, Arthur catches him off guard and attacks him with a blow to the stomach. The battle god falls to the ground, groaning in pain, and mercilessly, the king begins to step on him, saying that a loser must live like a loser, and the lower class must act as such. The young man screams in pain on the ground, unable to muster any kind of reaction, while the expedition leader wonders how a loser like him became a hero, completing his thought by saying it was a serious mistake. Damien simply looks at him with hatred, trembling in pain. He begins to fade, still looking at Arthur, wondering when things started to go wrong. 10 years ago, the first virtual reality game ever, called Chronicles of Arcia, was released. The game attracted people with its realistic graphics and active NPCs. In the game, there was the main event, which was to defeat the Demon King, but the reward was unknown. This event would grant the first player to finish the mission the ability to establish a kingdom, become the hero of the world of Arcia, and earn an astronomical trophy. Many users gave everything they had in the game, and the protagonist was one of them. He dedicated his life to the game for 10 years, even though his family discouraged him, as he needed the game to compensate for his failed life. It was there that he met King Arthur. His real name was Jeong Yumin, and he was a servant of the goddess Arya. He also possessed the Infinite Circle, which granted him infinite mana. Arthur led the expedition with his warm personality and charisma, and thanks to him, they managed to reach the Demon King's castle dungeon. Back to the present, Damien was agonizing in pain, thinking that they were close to finishing the dungeon. The king sarcastically says that the world needs more people like Damien because, thanks to him, they were able to finish the dungeon and kill the Demon King. The protagonist asks if he had planned to betray him from the beginning. Drawing his staff, the king replies, yes. Enraged, he insults the protagonist in every way and says that he wishes Damien would go to hell. As the leader of the expedition prepares to strike, Damien cannot believe that this is how he will meet his end, especially because of a traitor. Suddenly, a voice asks if he wants revenge. The protagonist is shocked to hear that, and then realizes that someone is approaching from behind Arthur. Completely incapacitated, he tries to reach the voice, which says it understands exactly how he feels. While the king watches the young man lying on the ground, the voice introduces itself as the Lord of the Abyss, Abraxas, and says it will continue the progress of evil. The leader comments that he is very persistent for still being alive, then proceeds with the fatal blow, while the voice says that it will destroy the goddess of light, Arya, and will name Damien as the Avenger. As the strike quickly approaches the protagonist's head, Abraxas says that Damien will be the one to bring the second coming of chaos to Earth, and just as the blow is about to strike the protagonist, a shield is created, completely repelling the attack. Sometime later, the protagonist wakes up startled. Sweating cold, he begins to breathe deeply. Soon he gets up, looks around, and wonders what happened. Realizing that he is in his room, Damien wonders how he ended up there. Suddenly, his brother appears, calling him Hyung, which is his real name, and says that they should go eat. The protagonist looks startled and asks if he is really his brother Jin-hoon, who responds by asking if he is crazy. Damien thinks his brother should be in the army by now and wonders why he is wearing a school uniform. Jin-hoon tells the protagonist that he had asked to be woken up early and leaves the room, slamming the door, saying that he has done his part. The protagonist doesn't understand anything that is happening and says that he must be going crazy. Suddenly, he notices something, and when he looks at the calendar, he realizes it's July 28th, 2020. He reflects that this date is very close to the beta version launch of Chronicles of Arcia. This makes him wonder if he might have traveled back in time. Soon after, he goes to have breakfast with his family, and his mother asks Ji-hoon why Hyung is acting like that. He answers that he has no idea. The protagonist, crying with joy, eats everything he can and wonders how long it has been since he had a homemade meal and that it was the best food in the world. While eating, he thinks that the taste reminded him of when they were children, and his mother was still healthy back then. Soon, he begins to feel very full and concludes that he's eaten for too long. Suddenly, he hears his brother's phone, announcing an advertisement for the beta version of Chronicles of Arcia. The announcement said there were swords and magic in a world of endless adventures, and it was a grand narrative in the world's first virtual reality game. Ji-hoon asks what the hell that was, and the protagonist quickly responds that it was Chronicles of Arcia. His brother, surprised, asks what he's talking about, and he answers that it's just a game with that name. The brothers begin to tease each other while the protagonist thinks that today is truly the beta version launch day. Hyung slams his hand on the table, frustrated, as he remembers everything that happened inside the game. After the meal, the protagonist tells his mother that he's going home, and she asks him to take care and not forget to call her. Inside the taxi, he confirms and tells his mother to also take care of her health. Quickly, he turns to the taxi driver, asking him to take him to Gunjong Station fast. The driver starts to drive while he reflects that he really is living 10 years ago. He picks up his phone and thinks that, at the time when the Galaxy M24 wasn't a brick, but the best capsule for gaming, it was also the most difficult time of his life. He remembers working like crazy to support his father, who was bedridden. However, he couldn't bear the weight of being the head of the family, so he started playing and cut off ties with all his relatives. Upset, he begins to question how he could forget that time. Suddenly, a notification pops up saying that the system is being activated. Hyung is completely confused by it, and more notifications appear saying that the countdown has begun. The remaining time is 167 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. The system also asks him to keep in mind that it will be terminated if he doesn't log in to the game. Damien looks at the notifications, completely confused, because he hasn't logged into the game yet. Suddenly, he begins to hear something, and a voice starts saying things in another language, causing him intense headaches. Trembling and scared, he's sure he has heard that voice before, and the taxi driver, noticing the young man agitated, asks if everything is all right. A little while later, at the virtual reality electronics store called Evertale, the clerk asks if he's looking for something. Looking like a zombie, the protagonist responds that yes. He begins looking around while the receptionist says she's sorry, as all the capsules in the store are bought through a reservation system. While Hyung looks at the capsules, the woman continues, saying that if it's all right, he could do the customization test. Completely disturbed, he responds that he doesn't care about that and just wants something that's being launched that day, which surprises the woman. She then begins to walk and asks him to follow her. After walking for some time, they arrive at another location. She presents a capsule and says that this is a remodeled product, which had the purchase canceled by another customer, and the price is $2 million. The clerk continues explaining that this is a product used as a store demonstration, but the protagonist, without thinking twice, grabs the card and says he'll take it. The woman is stunned by this and wonders if this guy is some sort of son of Elon Musk. Hyung then begins to leave the store, while the woman says that the delivery will take place that afternoon. Sometime later, notifications appear saying that the user registration has started and that the virtual reality mode is synchronizing. Inside the capsule, Damien reflects that he used most of the money he saved and can't do anything about it. Closing his eyes, he continues thinking that with the return to the past, the system windows, and that voice, there's no doubt, that was really the Demon King, Abraxas. More notifications appear, alerting that synchronization is complete, and he is now connected to the game. With fury in his eyes, the protagonist asks for the game to begin. Suddenly, the system gives an error report on the game and notifies of danger. The main path alert has been detected, and the main blocking protocol of Chronicles of Arcia has been accelerated. In San Francisco, California, several error notifications appear at Evertail's ultra-secret department, Oracle. Operator Chloe is shocked and wonders what is happening. She approaches the microphone and alerts all the Oracle department staff that the black code has been triggered. The staff panic, wondering what is happening and why this emergency is occurring. Chloe turns around and asks the team leader to come to her immediately. The team leader, who is the head of the Oracle, named Kim, appears running and asks what the problem is. Upon reaching her side, he quickly notices the emergency alerts and asks when this started. Chloe promptly responds that it just started, and no one knows the reason for it yet. She mentions that the Akashic record of blocking protocol for the main path is slowly accelerating, and because of that, they may lose control of the situation. In the main path, the Akashic record is a superintelligence that created the game Chronicles of Arcia, and the path is an unexplored territory that still needs to be investigated. Kim and the Oracle are currently monitoring it, but if anything goes wrong, it could erase the system, and consequently, the game. Alerts indicate that the control rights over the main path are falling, dropping below 25%, and the Akashic record has begun attacking the server. Kim becomes desperate and doesn't know what to do to stop it. He informs Chloe that control over the main path is lost, which shocks her. In a panic, the head of the Oracle decides to take the last possible measure and presses the red button with all his strength. The system alerts that the Akashic record has removed the control rights, and the record has paused the blocking protocol. With that, the main path is being activated. Kim watches in anguish, hoping that the best outcome will happen. A notification alerts that Damien has been connected to the game, and the connection date is July 29, 2020. The protagonist opens his eyes, still seeming confused, and upon standing up, realizes that he has logged into the Whispering Isle. He looks at the horizon and reflects that he really has returned, still remembering the 10 years of playing and the name Jong Yuman, who was King Arthur in the game. He recalls his final moments when the king told him that trash must act like trash, and asked how such a loser had become a hero. Enraged, he clenches his fist in anger and says that he will find Jong, no matter what, and when he finds him, he will make sure to wipe out that worm. The protagonist grows even angrier and starts to exhaust his aura, saying he will make sure Arthur regrets ever playing that game. Suddenly, he looks around and begins to question where he is, as he should be starting in the beginner's village. The system alerts that the connection record for player Damien has been confirmed, which leaves him confused. Then, more notifications appear stating that the countdown has started and the evaluation has also begun. The first condition is that if the protagonist doesn't log into the game within 168 hours, he will die, and the second is that when the character dies, the player will also die. The third condition is that if the character doesn't complete a goal within the set time, he will die as well. Hyung is incredulous about these conditions and, completely disturbed, wonders what the hell is going on. Another system screen appears indicating that the sense limits have been removed. The protagonist falls to the ground, disoriented, while being alerted that the removal of senses is complete, and the final goal for player Damien has been renewed. The final goal is now the fall of the Demon King, and the remaining time is approximately 88 hours. The protagonist, still trembling on the ground, says that this game is cursed and wonders what has happened to his body. Suddenly, the system notifies him that a class will be granted based on the final goal condition, and his new class is now Witch Doctor. The protagonist looks at that system screen and wonders what this Witch Doctor class is. Witch Doctors are users of primitive powers, the beings closest to the end, ancient witchcraft, and curses. Their identities are shrouded in mystery, and they believe that the end is salvation. The system then displays Damien's stats, showing that he is level 1, has no affiliation, and his alignment is infinitely negative. The protagonist looks at his stats and becomes completely frustrated by them. Another screen indicates that his class rank is hidden, and his class has spells related to poison and other abilities, also being a type of class that generates damage through output. He reflects that, above that, poison is a special attack subclass, and although it's an occult class, it doesn't seem to fit him. Suddenly, he is startled by a new notification informing him that he has committed a violation and that his alignment is very low. The system shows that his alignment is more negative than his bank account, and therefore, a penalty has been applied. Damien nearly has a heart attack when he sees that extremely low alignment level. He begins shaking the system screen and shouts that this could only be possible if he had wiped out all of humanity. After calming down a bit, he places his hand on his head, considering that this information must be bugged. But soon the system shows that the penalty affects him in several ways. The protagonist thinks that now he's really screwed with all these penalties, and imagines NPCs attacking him, which is one of the penalties. He reflects that this basically suggests he is the Demon King, and even though he's been given a second chance, his life is on the line right now. Worried, he wonders if he should keep his face hidden to avoid being attacked. Sometime later, in the village of Dunvaten, someone opens the door, leaving the attendant confused by the silhouette that appears. The attendant, in fact, is Elmore, the village chief, who welcomes the adventurer who just entered. The adventurer is our protagonist, who appears with a paper bag on his head. The village chief asks why he is wearing a bag on his head, and the protagonist, with a serious look, responds that he's wearing it because he thought it looked cool. Elmore is completely stunned by that answer. Completely irritated, Damien thinks that if it weren't for the mandatory quest, he wouldn't have to wear that ridiculous bag on his head. The old man reflects a bit on that and starts to say that he respects the adventurer's taste, but is abruptly interrupted by the protagonist, asking Elmore to give him a mission as quickly as possible. Elmore is surprised and starts going through the paperwork. However, he stops, and with a serious look, asks the protagonist to listen carefully. He explains that the Whispering Isle is full of chicks, and the problem is that they ate all the food, draining the stock in the warehouses. The chief places the mission poster on the table and asks Damien to capture the chicks. Shortly after, in the mountains behind the village, a chick is spotted, living peacefully, but the protagonist is hidden behind a bush, already aiming at the little creature. Suddenly, he shoots a dart, hitting the chick squarely on its behind, making it fall flat on the ground. The protagonist then takes a breath after firing with the blowgun. Completely exhausted, he sits on the ground and remembers that, due to the penalty, he only has one vitality point at the moment. Suddenly, the system alerts him about the mission to catch the chicks. The mission is a tutorial, and Damien must capture 10 chicks and recover 10 yellow feathers, with the reward being a beginner Elmore set. The protagonist looks at that screen and becomes completely discouraged, having caught only one chick so far. Opening the skills tab, he notices that only the poisonous needle attack is unlocked and concludes that there's not much he can do for now, as he'll only be able to learn other skills when he reaches level 10. After checking the skills, Damien prepares to return to hunting the chicks and feels excited, as he now knows how to use his blowgun more effectively. He quickly starts taking down more chicks, one after the other, receiving notifications that he's gaining experience. Meanwhile, in the Yushin Group building, inside a virtual reality capsule, the young Zhong, who would later be known as King Arthur in the game, logs out and scratches his head. A man approaches him, and Zhong comments that the game isn't as bad as he thought. Standing up from the capsule, he asks how the players are reacting. The man in a suit replies that all the capsules were sold out as soon as they were launched. The young man finds that interesting, and soon notices his phone ringing. It was the director calling, and when he answers, Zhong asks if the director had prepared what he requested. The director confirms that he did, and emphasizes that he has prepared the most suitable class, the quickest way to level up, and all the necessary equipment. Zhong thanks him for everything, and excitedly comments that now is the time to turn the game around. Sitting at his desk, he says he'll call again later, and says goodbye to the director. As soon as he hangs up, he notices the birds outside the building. Zhong is the fourth grandson of the president of the Yushin Group, a professional player of a game called The Storm of Time and Space. Meanwhile, in the forest, the protagonist kneels, exhausted, after finishing off several chicks for the mission. He soon realizes that he has killed them all and celebrates finally completing the mission. Suddenly, a notification pops up indicating that he has leveled up from level 1 to level 2. Damien is thrilled to level up and celebrates proudly, until he notices something that surprises him. The system indicates that, now at level 2, he has 5 status points to distribute, which excites him. He reflects that usually, when leveling up, only 2 points are gained, and if more than that is given, it means you have an excellent class in the game. Knowing this, he wonders if perhaps he has a hidden class, and considers that maybe that class isn't as bad as he thought. Clenching his fist in excitement, Damien says that his revenge against Zhong Yuman is coming soon. Soon after, he is seen running like there's no tomorrow, while some chickens chase him at full speed. A little while later, one of the villagers notices something coming at high speed, and it's the protagonist, running wildly past him, leaving the young villager stunned and wondering what that was. He soon realizes that the chickens are chasing a guy with a bag on his head and wonders what the hell is going on. One villager asks another if the guy with the bag on his head is a tamer, and the young man with black hair responds that he probably isn't. Looking at the pathetic scene, he comments that the guy will probably be easily defeated due to his low level. While running, Damien turns around and shoots a dart with his blowgun, hitting one of the chickens chasing him squarely. However, the others become furious and continue charging at him. Realizing this, he wonders if he overdid it, and soon starts running again, thinking that since he wants to finish Elmore's mission quickly, he needs to gather a bunch of them to make the perfect move. Suddenly, he stops and, looking around, wonders if this is the right place. As the chickens run at him like he's a corn cob, he then gives a sly smile, realizing that the chickens have fallen perfectly into his trap. Looking into the hole, he says that he has finally caught them all. With an even more sinister grin, he says to the chickens to get ready to become experience points. After eliminating all the creatures, several notifications appear, alerting that the protagonist has gained experience. With all that experience, he reaches level 9. Damien celebrates his achievement, commenting that if he keeps going like this, he'll soon reach level 10 and acquire a new ability. But suddenly, a notification appears alerting that, due to his participation in the battle, his experience has increased by 1, leaving him surprised. Sometime later, in a nearby forest, another chicken is finished off, and a new notification appears saying that experience was gained. However, this time it wasn't Damien, but a player named Chiol, who was celebrating his kill. 2 other players were there. The one in blue is named Dong, and the other is Minyong, and they were commenting that it was very easy to gain experience this way. Looking at the nearly dead chicken, one of them commented that they didn't know who had set that up, but they should take advantage of the opportunity. After finishing off the creature, Chiol levels up to level 7, leaving his companions in disbelief. While the young man was celebrating his victory with his friends, the protagonist sneaks up behind them, asking if he was having fun. Just as he was about to turn to answer yes, the protagonist delivers a powerful punch right in the middle of his face, knocking the young man unconscious on the ground with his face smashed. A notification arrives for Chiol, saying that due to the knockout, he won't be able to control his character for 5 seconds. His friends, seeing that, panic and run to help the unconscious young man on the ground. But as they try to help, the protagonist appears and, with a dark expression, asks if they ate the chickens that were his. The young men are terrified by the strange character, while Damien politely asks them to return what they ate. The friends are outraged, and one of them asks the protagonist who he thinks he's talking to and if he has proof that it was them who ate the chickens. Damien looks to the side and sees all of his chickens destroyed. He then turns with a sinister aura and asks if they really want to meet hell. The 3 friends, hearing this, start to wet themselves in fear as he approaches, saying that this is their last chance to return what they ate. Chiol starts to regain consciousness and, grabbing his sword, charges full force at the protagonist. Damien calmly begins to draw a staff, saying that he had warned them, and quickly strikes a huge blow to Chiol's head, leaving Dong and Minyong stunned and angry. The 3 friends quickly advance to attack the protagonist, who is surrounded by a fiery aura. Damien calmly prepares his staff and hits all of them with incredible speed, sending them flying with the blows. The protagonist then approaches the young man with the eye patch, who is terrified, and without mercy, delivers a heavy strike, ending him. The other 3 young men, battered after the beating, wonder what the hell is wrong with that guy. The system announces that the group member Dong has been unlived. They look at Damien and realize he's a chaotic player. Terrified of the protagonist, they decide to flee and begin running in a panic. Chaotic players are those who, within the game, specialize in hunting other players and are equivalent to criminals. Seeing them run, the protagonist readies his blowgun and quickly fires a shot, hitting both players squarely. Soon, they feel the effect of the dart and collapse on the ground, feeling sick. The system alerts that both players have been poisoned, and with that, the protagonist looks at them seriously. Looking at the 2 fallen players, he notices that one of the group members is missing. Meanwhile, Chiol was lying in the grass, trying to remain silent to avoid following his friends, who had gone to another plane. He quickly opens the system to try to log out, but the system alerts him that he cannot log out while participating in an active battle, and he will only be able to log out in 300 seconds. Chiol thinks that he won't have that long and will soon be finished. He panics, trembling, and thinks that they were very unlucky to bump into a chaotic player. While he trembles, lying there trying to hide, the protagonist appears right next to him, and as he looks up, he realizes that Damien is already preparing for the fatal blow. The young man soils himself, unable to speak a word, while the protagonist is already blowing into his blowgun, and a second later, only an agonized scream is heard in the forest. Damien is alerted that he has already acquired 58 yellow feathers, 47 white feathers, and 47 basic vitality potions. He hums contentedly while looking through all the information in the system, and soon starts walking, leaving the bodies behind, saying that it yielded him more rewards than he expected. Suddenly, the system notifies him again, this time informing him that he has reached level 10. Now, he can use the skills Control of the Dead, Sinister Boost, Corrupt Elixir, and Voodoo Doll. The protagonist celebrates his achievements, emphasizing that he can finally use the skills that were previously locked. But out of nowhere, an infraction screen appears, leaving him surprised. The system notifies him that he has finished off another player, and as a result, his alignment has been decreased by 1 point. There's no way for his alignment to decrease further. He comments that he's finally hit rock bottom, but that it might actually be useful at times, and notices that this also granted him a monstrosity title. He decides to click to see more. The effects of this are extremely beneficial to him, such as an increase in the item drop rate from victims by 500%, and he concludes that it seems like some kind of cheat. Closing the system, he decides that, one way or another, this will be useful. Damien then turns and continues his journey, saying that he's looking forward to leveling up from here on out. Sometime later, outside the game, a convenience store clerk notices someone entering. It's the protagonist, who is quickly recognized by the clerk, a familiar face. Hyung goes straight to the shelves, starts picking up products, and his colleague quickly asks why he's buying so much ready-to-eat food. Damien answers that he's been very busy, which makes his colleague look doubtful. He puts the items on the counter and asks his colleague to just ring up the purchase. But the young clerk asks him to keep his wallet, saying it's not that expensive, which confuses him, as the total would be over $50. The young cashier, smiling, tells him he doesn't need to pay as long as Hyung buys him a drink next time. After the purchase, the news starts announcing that player Jong Yuman from The Tempest of Time and Space is about to retire. The protagonist hears this and begins to pay attention to the news, which continues saying that Jong revealed he's tired of traditional games that only use a mouse and keyboard. The next game he will play will be the current Chronicles of Arcia. Hyung leans closer to the screen and asks if that's really Jong. His colleague asks if he knows the guy. The protagonist, trying to disguise his surprise, says that he's quite famous, and the young clerk points out that Jong came from a rich family and plays very well. Damien turns with a serious expression, reflecting on that information. Sometime later, in the forest near Dunvaten village, he quickly returns with everything, hunting chickens, while thinking that the trader will soon be arriving in the game. The system shows that he is currently at level 15, and with this, he thinks he cannot waste any time. Looking around, he deduces that he needs to get stronger than he is now and should continue his journey. He opens the system and checks his current mission: defeat the wild mutant boar and bring back its pelt. This is an epic class mission, and the reward is a recommendation from Elmore. Damien then starts walking, reflecting that this is the last mission on this island, and by completing it, he can go to another place with Elmore's recommendation. However, wild boars tend to migrate frequently, making them hard to find. If he doesn't find their den, he'll have to wait an hour for the respawn. Suddenly, he notices something that makes his eyes shine immediately. It's a wild boar nearby. This creature is from the elite-type wild monster species and is level 30. The protagonist crouches to hide and concludes that he needs to stay alert, as that boar could take him out due to its high level. The types of monsters currently in the game are categorized into normal, elite, renowned, and champion, with those above the elite type having special characteristics. For now, there are 8 of each of the 3 categories: attack, defense, and population control, forming a total of 24 variations. Damien then uses the Elixir of Corruption skill and prepares to launch it at the boar to discover its characteristics. The skill hits the monster squarely in the forehead, making it furious. However, the protagonist quickly positions himself on top of a tree and waves at the animal, which looks at him angrily and charges at him. But Damien quickly dodges the attack and says that this was his plan. He throws a type of potion at the beast, saying it's his welcoming gift. The flask hits the target, making the boar grunt from the impact. The protagonist watches the animal's reaction, noting that it shakes its head, and deduces that it doesn't seem to have physical immunity. The monster becomes extremely agitated while Damien continues reflecting. It's not summoning other monsters, it has no magical immunity, and there's no defensive barrier. Suddenly, a notification pops up, alerting that the wild boar's defense mechanism has been corroded, reducing its defense. The beast, even more enraged, stops for a moment, and Damien thinks the elixir of corruption is working well. But then, the monster charges again, catching him off guard. The protagonist quickly dodges the attack and thinks that this time it was close. The animal gets even angrier and makes a loud noise. Then, it charges again with another powerful attack. Damien starts running from the beast, thinking that this behavior is typical of monsters from dumb species. But suddenly, a barrier begins to form, creating a huge wall in front of him. He wonders why this wall appeared out of nowhere. When he touches the barrier, he concludes that the monster's characteristic is wall formation. The boar continues charging at full speed. Damien, trapped, says that now he's in trouble and won't be able to dodge this one. The monster attacks with all its strength, causing a tremendous impact. A few seconds later, only a paper bag is seen floating in the air after the blow, but suddenly, the protagonist reappears, this time in a sinister form, emitting a dark aura. This is level 1 zombification, which occurs when vitality reaches 0, transforming the player into a zombie for 600 seconds. In this state, the sorcerer emits a plague aura, cursing any opponent within a 3-meter radius. With all his rage, Damien says that it hurt a lot. The boar, seeing all that fury and the powerful aura in front of it, starts shaking in fear. Emitting even more of that terrifying aura, Damien declares that he will wipe out that filthy pig. A massive dark energy takes over the whole area as he prepares his attack, shouting for the monster to go to hell. All his attacks hit the boar squarely, and soon the system indicates that the animal is affected by poison, dying quickly. A notification alerts that Damien has 10 seconds left before the zombification ends, and he comments that 10 seconds are more than enough. Clenching his fist, he begins preparing the plague aura skill and launches the strike right at the boar's forehead as the animal agonizes in pain. The system warns him about the remaining time, and soon the debuffs start affecting the beast. Damien then prepares another strike and attacks with all his strength in the middle of the monster's snout, draining its vital liquid and finishing it off on the ground. Soon, the system announces that he has defeated the wild boar and gained experience, reaching level 16. Damien looks at the defeated monster and takes a deep breath until suddenly, the system alerts that there are 0 seconds remaining. He sits down on the ground, exhausted, and is notified that the zombification has ended. Soon, his body begins to return to normal, and relieved, he says that he has finally won. More notifications pop up, informing that he obtained several parts of the boar, 30,000 gold coins, and the title, The One Who Slayed the Wild Boar, alone. Finally, the system alerts that he has completed the mission, The Predator of the Whispering Island, making him breathe a sigh of relief. Damien celebrates to himself for earning all the rewards and completing the mission. With that title, he now has an additional 3% strength, 3% movement speed, and 1% resistance, making him feel proud of himself. The protagonist decides to check the items he obtained, thinking about giving some of them to Elmore. Suddenly, a voice arises saying, "An adventurer from another world who rose from death." He is startled when he turns around and realizes it's an unknown man, who continues saying that this is quite peculiar. Damien approaches the man and asks who the hell he is. The system informs that this unknown old man seems to have lived for several millennia, but his information is hidden, making Damien even more surprised. The old man asks how he was able to move like a dead man. Out of nowhere, he places his hand on the protagonist's head, which irritates him, and he asks what the man is doing. The old man then starts talking, saying that judging by the small rune on his forehead, he truly is an adventurer from another world. Damien quickly slaps the man's hand away and asks him to keep his distance. However, the old man simply ignores him and exclaims that he finally understands. He asks if Damien borrowed the powers of darkness, which shocks him. The old man continues explaining that he must have used the power of darkness to temporarily become a zombie, which isn't a bad thing, as it's hard to die as a zombie. The old man then looks at him curiously and asks why an adventurer from another world is harboring a level of darkness equivalent to that of the Demon King. The protagonist immediately asks how he knows that, and smiling, the old man replies that he can see it very clearly. Suddenly, the system informs that new information has been added, leaving Damien more confused than ever. The system displays the old man's information, revealing that his name is Kaerun, the priest of the apocalypse. Upon looking at the information, the protagonist becomes even more confused and asks if he's part of some sort of pseudocult, which makes Kaerun wear a dark expression upon hearing it. He exudes a powerful aura, saying that he is the high priest of the seventh god Shaka, and that he will spread the word of the apocalypse after defeating the Queen of Gods. Preparing for a strike, Keirun says he needs to teach that kid a lesson, while Damien tries to explain himself and asks him to wait. Keirun doesn't listen and charges forward, throwing a punch. Noticing it just in time, the protagonist manages to dodge at the last second and wonders why he's being attacked. But before he could catch his breath, another punch is already inches from his face, and once again, he manages to dodge at the last moment. Suddenly, Keirun unleashes an attack that destroys everything in front of him, which Damien also dodges, reflecting on what kind of destructive power that is, while the old man asks how he managed to avoid it. Already irritated, the protagonist yells that he was forced to dodge to avoid becoming a corpse. Excited by the battle, Keirun releases even more of his power and says he's going to test how well Damien dodges. Damien, in a combat stance, thinks the old man is really crazy and wonders what he should do. Suddenly, the system informs him that Keirun is showing hostility towards him, and that Keirun's main judgment path has been activated. The representative of the forgotten god Shaka has taken an interest in him, and first, he must try to survive the old man. The system also says this is a conventional mission that cannot be abandoned. He reflects on conventional missions. These are offered only to a select few users and are of great importance, deciding the future of the game. Depending on the user's actions, the world of Chronicles of Arcia could change completely. Still pondering this, Damien wonders what the old man has to do with something conventional. But before he can finish his thought, Keirun starts running wildly toward him. Immediately, the protagonist starts running too, fleeing from him and thinking the old man is getting crazier. When Damien was the god of battle, the conventional mission that was activated involved defeating Abraxas. Along with the so-called Six Masters, he entered the worst dungeon in the Abyss world, having to face the Demon King Abraxas. Had he not completed the conventional mission, the intermediate world would have been destroyed. That's why these missions are the most important in the game. Damien watches the old man carefully, thinking that this situation really is related to the conventional, and therefore he must complete the mission no matter what. In the blink of an eye, Keirun is already in front of him, shouting for him to stop stalling. He jumps, preparing a powerful blow, and yells that this young man must really be crazy. However, the protagonist remains calm and begins reciting a ritual in a strange language. He activates the impulse skill, exhaling a strong aura and thinking that now is not the time to think. Preparing for combat, he reflects that he must let his instincts take over and approach the old man with utmost sincerity. Keirun, already with his punch ready to strike the young man, attacks with full force, destroying the area and causing a flash, followed by an explosion. The old man, visibly irritated, shouts, asking how long Damien is going to keep running. After punching a tree, he finds the young man, who is hiding and wondering why such an old martial artist is so strong. Keirun stops and stares at the protagonist, telling him to stop running. He jumps again, preparing another blow. But once again, Damien dodges and keeps running. Looking back, Damien thinks that his mission is simply to survive, so he needs to keep stalling for a little longer. But upon seeing Keirun, he realizes the old man is preparing some powerful attack and is struck with shock. The old man seemed to be preparing something like a Kamehameha. He asks if the protagonist can dodge that, which leaves Damien in panic, thinking it might be the end for him. Keirun then unleashes his powerful attack toward Damien, who doesn't have time to react and just screams in desperation. The attack causes a tremendous explosion at the spot where Damien was standing. After the smoke clears, only a crater is seen, with the protagonist kneeling in the center. The system informs that only 2 seconds remain. Keirun approaches him and comments that he has a great body. Damien, irritated, responds that it's nothing compared to Keirun's. Finally, the effect of zombification ends, and the protagonist says he thought he wouldn't make it. Suddenly, the mission completed alert appears, and the old man comments that, at least, Damien's mouth is still alive. Returning to his normal form, the protagonist asks Keirun if he knew how he got that opportunity, emphasizing that he has to live life to the fullest. The old man helps him out of the crater, asking if the young man was referring to the power of darkness, which Damien confirms, asking if Keirun hadn't recognized it before. Smiling, Keirun replies that he had recognized it, as there's no way the high priest of the seventh god Shaka wouldn't notice it. This makes Damien question who the seventh god Shaka is. Keirun says he is the greatest god of Arcia, the lord of darkness and the apocalypse. The protagonist listens attentively and reflects on this. Keirun continues explaining that the great gods are the supreme goddess Arya of light, Phoenix of fire, Nisa of water, Tenasil of nature, Oriet of iron, and Crowd of earth. Damien thinks about this, scratching his head, and says he understands, but wonders if the system could have lied to him. The old man, smiling, says that now Damien is ready to hear and will go straight to the point. Looking determined, Kirun asks if the young man doesn't want to become stronger, as he heard that adventurers from other worlds yearn for strength and rapid growth, something Damien immediately confirms. Kirun scratches his beard and says that in that case, Damien should become his disciple, leaving him completely stunned. Damien simply turns around and bids the old man farewell, which greatly angers Kirun. Out of nowhere, Kirun plants his hand on the protagonist's head, angrily asking where he thinks he's going. Damien, with tears in his eyes from the blow, calls Kirun a crazy old man, further enraging him. Kirun says that the power of Lord Shaka is so grand that it's incomprehensible, and if Damien becomes his disciple, even a useless person like him could become a sovereign. However, Damien, still rubbing his head, rejects the offer, saying he doesn't believe him. The old man becomes furious and shouts at him, but Damien argues that Kirun is randomly suggesting he become his disciple without any solid reasons. Kirun then puts his hand in his pocket and says that if he really needs proof, he should take a look at this. He shows a book, confusing the protagonist. A notification appears saying, "Invocation of the Apocalypse." The Book of the Black Alliance is emitting a faint light, and the conventional mission, meeting the seventh god, has been activated. The old man begins to laugh and explains that this is a divine object, the only tool that will allow him to meet Lord Shaka. Damien wonders what the hell he's talking about. Confident, Kirun asks him to open the book. The protagonist, somewhat hesitant, begins to open the book, and suddenly, the old man orders him not to make another move. Damien immediately stops, turns around, and asks what the problem is. Looking back, Kirun is already hitting him by surprise, knocking him out instantly. Sometime later, he wakes up completely lost, scared, and feeling intense pain in his head. He curses the old man with the worst names possible. The system informs him that his current location is unknown. Damien, irritated, wonders if Kirun intended to send him to the underworld to meet that so-called seventh god. Suddenly, a shadow begins to emerge in front of him, and someone appears, surprising him. It's a boy who seems confused to see Damien there. He quickly approaches, leaving the protagonist wondering what the hell the boy is doing. This boy, in fact, is Lord Shaka, and out of nowhere, he starts dancing and singing around him. At one point, he strikes his staff on the ground, and getting closer, says that Damien smells good and familiar, making him intrigued and causing him to smell himself. The Lord says he likes him, and asks if Damien would like to be his friend. The protagonist looks closely at him, and asks if he has no friends, irritating the boy, who quickly responds that he has many, many friends. He says his friends like him, and that he will give Damien a friend too, which leaves him confused. The boy points to a side and says his friend is over there. Damien turns to look and asks what that is. It's a bunch of chicks that seem happy to be there, and they begin to rush towards him. The boy starts smiling and says they are all his friends, asking if that isn't amazing. Again he gets closer, asking if Damien will be his friend. Damien agrees, and they shake hands. With a friendly expression, the boy smiles and says that from now on, they will be friends. At that moment, the protagonist starts feeling something strange, and his vision gets blurry as he concludes he is getting very weak. Shortly after, Damien wakes up startled and gets up. The old man is right behind him and comments that he's finally awake. Damien turns in shock, and Kirun asks how he's feeling. Consumed with rage, the protagonist begins walking toward him, cursing him as a crazy old man. He grabs him by the neck, while the old man asks him to let go. Damien retorts, saying that the old man almost sent him to the grave, and asks why he should let him go. Kirun begins to grow furious and headbutts the protagonist with all his might, causing Damien to lose his balance and tremble in pain. Suddenly, the system alerts that Damien's condition is critical, and that, until he regains his strength, he will be unable to move. Damien just accepts this, shaken by going through this again. Hours later, he slowly starts to open his eyes, and the old man asks if he's awake. He rubs his head, still feeling a lot of pain, and asks Kirun if his head is made of stone. The old man changes his expression and asks seriously what he just said. Damien, covering up, answers that he didn't say anything. He thinks to himself that the old man, despite looking like a homeless person, is incredibly strong, and that he will have to swallow his pride. Kirun then asks what happened. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, and the old man concludes by saying it's about what he said regarding Lord Shaka. He then explains that the Lord kindly asked for them to be friends. Kirun becomes a bit thoughtful, sitting on the ground, and asks if Lord Shaka really asked them to be friends, which the protagonist confirms. With some excitement, Kirun then starts explaining that friendship is a bond of brotherhood, and that this means the Lord has internally decided that Damien will be his successor. The protagonist, upon hearing that, is astounded and begins to argue, but the old man interrupts, saying that all Damien has to do now is follow him. He begins to celebrate, saying that this is wonderful, leaving Damien suspicious. Soon the system notifies that the path meeting the seventh god has been completed, and Damien thinks that this will definitely be good. Suddenly, the old man slams his hand on the ground and asks him to sit there. The protagonist asks if they are going to meditate or something like that. The old man says no, that in fact, he will tell him about his future plans, emphasizing that this dates back a long time. Damien, bored, thinks he is about to hear an old story. Kirun begins to explain that there were 7 gods in that land, and thanks to the goddess of creation, Arya of light, and the god of the apocalypse, Shaka, the cycle of life and death was well balanced. However, one day, as if afraid of Shaka's destructive power, Arya approached the other 5 gods and argued that Shaka's power was more than enough to defeat them all, suggesting that they should restrain him. Kirun continues saying that, although there were differences in opinion, no one denied the idea, and they decided to stop him. However, despite fearing Shaka's power, they wanted to possess it for themselves. This sparked a war between Lord Shaka and the other 6 gods, shaking the heavens and splitting the earth, a war that lasted for a long time. Even as the god of the apocalypse, Shaka couldn't withstand the 6 gods and was finally defeated. He left everything that remained to his family and fell into an eternal sleep, retaining only his divinity. Thus, the 7th god was forgotten by the people. This makes Damien reflect that the old man must be a member of Shaka's family. Meanwhile, Kirun continues saying that with the disappearance of Lord Shaka, the 6 gods felt at ease, thinking there were no more threats. However, from that point onward, the world was dominated by evil due to Shaka's absence, and those who should have died refused to remain dead. That's how the demons were created. Damien understands that the source of all darkness, Shaka, was actually a pillar of balance that kept everything peaceful, and that thanks to his absence, evil was born. Kirun comments that for hundreds of years he wandered the continent seeking the resurrection of the only god he serves, Lord Shaka, and searching for a power strong enough to defeat the other 6 gods. He emphasizes that perhaps the reason he wandered for so long was so that this day could come. He declares that from this moment on, Damien will be his disciple and the sword of Lord Shaka to defeat the 6 gods, including Arya of light and all of her family. Upon hearing all this, the protagonist feels apprehensive, but before he could say anything, the old man, with a very serious expression, asks if he can do it. Suddenly, the system notifies that the conventional mission Kirun's wish has been activated and asks if he accepts. Looking at the mission, Damien reflects that the forgotten 7th god and the vengeful sword sharpened over centuries are in fact agents of a larger plan. Upon further thought, he concludes that Jeong Yuman, being related to Arya, makes this mission even more personal. The protagonist accepts the mission, concluding that resurrecting the 7th god is an important task, and it practically aligns with his own revenge. He then kneels and starts revering, asking Kirun to accept him as a disciple. The old man laughs, responding that he is definitely worthy of being his disciple. Soon, the system informs that Damien has formed a relationship with Kirun and acquired the title Agent of Revenge. Looking at the title, excited, he plans to finish the training with the old man as quickly as possible to defeat that blonde worm. Suddenly, Kirun gets up and starts to say goodbye. Damien bows, replying that he will be ready, but then suddenly stops and yells for the priest to wait. The old man asks what the problem is. Indignant, he points and asks if Kirun doesn't have anything else to teach him, like a skill. Kirun replies that he has already made him his successor and explained what to do, so his job is done. However, he quickly pulls out that book and says that he was forgetting something. He throws the book on the ground, saying that if Damien needs anything, he should just look in the book. Suddenly, a portal starts to open on the floor, and Kirun concludes by asking the young man not to look for him. The protagonist tries to run to reach him, shouting for him, but the old man enters the portal and says "see you later," leaving only Damien frustrated and the book. Out of nowhere, the system announces that he has received a mission. Anxious, he opens the system to see what it is about. The mission Kirun's wish is to resurrect the god of darkness, Shaka, and defeat the 6 gods and their families who control that land. After checking the mission, Damien starts trembling and wonders if he really has to do all of that alone. Desperate, he screams, questioning how on earth he is going to finish this. He kicks a stone and wonders if this mission is really possible to complete, and if he should really send the families of the 6 gods to hell. After all, they are the companions who helped him defeat Abraxas, and they are the elite of the most powerful beings in the world. Agnes, the Scarlet, Siren of Ice, Halo of the Mind, Cyrus of Iron, and Luke of Stone. They are the families of the most powerful gods, with disaster-class powers. And of all of them, Arya's family, with Jeong Yumin, the radiant King Arthur, is the most imposing. He was praised as the god of magic after obtaining the infinite mana item called the Infinite Circle. Clenching his fist, Damien wonders if he can really defeat Jeong and his former companions. But with determination, he affirms that there is no need to fear them from now on. Despite not knowing why, he understands that when he thought it was his end, he was given this opportunity, going back in time. With even more determination and anger, he vows to complete that damned mission and end this sick fate. Suddenly, several system screens appear, surprising him. They notify that the book Invocation of the Apocalypse has been acquired and that a new clause has been added. The system shows various additional clauses, but due to his low level, one section of the clauses has been deactivated. The protagonist doesn't understand what is happening, while more screens announce that Return to the Village has been activated. Item Evaluation, Item Disassembly, Item Synthesis, and Item Creation have also been activated. Watching the book emit a glow, the protagonist, excited, contemplates that this must be the multi-use item he had heard about. He grabs the book, brags about having flipped through it, and realizes that it's an overpowered item, with several abilities. Looking closely, he deduces that luck is on his side, and decides to test the book's ability. He selects the Item Disassembly skill, which soon starts activating. Then, he synthesizes, and finally, creates, emitting a bright light that spreads out. Suddenly, the glow begins to take shape, making him excited. The system notifies that the item creation has been completed, leaving Damien apprehensive, but soon the wild boar helmet, a voodoo-style cultivation mask, appears right in front of him. This item has several bonuses, and using it will make his opponents feel an immense pressure when facing him. The protagonist comments that, with all those bonuses to his stats, this is definitely the best option he has right now. He remembers that, on the international trading site, the game's bank, 100 gold coins are worth $1, and a wild boar head typically sells for 500,000 coins. He grabs the mask and starts scratching his head, reflecting that it's great to be able to make witch doctor class items, but if he keeps creating items in situations where he doesn't have money, he'll become a first-class bum. But before starting his plan, Damien decides to first take the animal's hide to the village chief. A little later, he arrives at the village and places the animal's pelt on the counter. The chief is astonished and asks if Damien really managed to get that on his own, and he confirms, emphasizing that he's sure it's the wild boar hide. The chief understands and says he will write a recommendation. He starts writing and comments that Damien isn't someone who should stay on that island. After finishing, he tells him to go to the port on the east side of the island to head to the mainland. Soon, the system notifies that Elmore's recommendation has been acquired. As he hands it to the protagonist, the chief emphasizes that this is his recommendation and that Damien should present it to the head of the Adventurer Guild's branch. Damien thanks him and heads toward the port. Shortly after, he stops to eat and decides to check his stats in the system. Currently, Damien is at level 16, holding the title of Monstruosity with decent stats and a nice variety of abilities. However, he feels unsettled by still being at level 16 and concludes that there's a long road ahead. Suddenly, he notices that he holds the title Agent of Vengeance, and upon analyzing it, he realizes that the title grants many bonuses during PvP, which makes him uncomfortable, as it seems to encourage exterminating other players, something he doesn't like. However, he acknowledges that this is a pseudo-religion, so it's part of the game. Just then, Damien hears something strange and sees a boy on the ground, desperate and calling for help, while a few hooded men surround him. One of them says the boy should have listened when they were still being nice. The man grabs the boy by the hair and claims that the kid just needs to pay, questioning why he's making it so hard for them. The protagonist, watching the scene, wonders if these are exterminator mages, and decides to approach to get a better look. The hooded man continues, saying that despite the heavy atmosphere, they're not bad people. Damien, analyzing the situation, concludes that the man must be the leader of the others. The man continues his sermon, while the protagonist, watching, thinks he's really skilled for having blocked the ship's dock with only 20 people. One of the crew members, who had been watching the scene, starts trembling with rage, quickly drawing his sword and rushing forward, shouting at the emo to screw off. The hooded man immediately notices the approach and begins casting a spell. Within moments, he shoots a bolt of energy directly into the warrior's chest, electrocuting him completely. The mage smiles, saying that it was easy to defeat him, while the man writhes on the ground. The onlookers are outraged. After the attack, the warrior begins breathing heavily, while the mage tells his subordinates that the guest is leaving and that they should send him off. All the other mages begin preparing their magic in their hands. The leader turns to them and starts to say there's nothing better to look at, but suddenly, an attack catches him off guard, ending him with a single blow. The others look on in disbelief, completely shocked, and one of them screams that they sliced the leader in just one hit. He quickly points at the protagonist, saying that it was Damien who did it. The others, eyeing Damien, ask if that's a wild boar. The protagonist stares at them with a vacant expression, making them tremble with fear. However, one of them, confident, asks who the hell this guy is. Out of nowhere, Damien raises his weapon and tells them to pay up. The brave mage responds, "Pay for what?" Furious, the witch doctor answers that they must pay with their lives and that he will give them 10 seconds. If they want to live, they must pay. In that moment of tension, the mage asks what the hell the other is talking about, and out of nowhere the protagonist begins a countdown, making the villain even angrier. One of the mages shouts, asking what he's doing and ordering one of them to eliminate the boarhead. Quickly, the protagonist finds himself surrounded by the group, and his countdown finally reaches 0. In the blink of an eye, he disappears from where he was, leaving the group wondering where he went. One of them looks up and, in shock, screams for everyone to dodge. But before they could do anything, they start getting hit by something, making them feel sick and scream for help. The people hit begin to perish quickly, while one of the mages wonders what the hell that was. The protagonist appears among the bodies and starts counting how many were taken down. Reflecting on his skills, fierce impulse, poison needle attack, and the corrupt elixir, he concludes that, thanks to his revenge agent title, his damage in PvP has also increased. As he thinks, the mage who was stunned starts cursing him. With a sinister look and holding one of his potions, the protagonist asks if that was beyond expectations and finishes off the mage with ease. Sometime later, the man who was being beaten wakes up, disoriented. His name is Brian. A girl named Wendy approaches and asks if he's okay, to which he responds by asking where he is. But suddenly, he starts remembering that he was attacked by mages and punches the ground in anger. He asks Wendy where those damn mages are, as he's going to take them out, and she replies that they are in the middle of a live stream. He then opens the chat, where people mock him and tell him to quit. Wendy approaches, asking him to calm down, emphasizing that he saw how strong they are. But he retorts, asking when a streamer ends his life. He answers his own question, saying it's when they decide they're not going to play anymore. Wendy is more confused than a toothless olive in a mouth, while Brian insists he's going to end those mages. But suddenly they notice a flash, and a huge cloud of smoke begins to fill the area. The mages in the smoke start falling, many unable to stay on their feet. Damien grabs one of them by the collar and starts laughing, taking off his mask. One of the mages, shocked by the scene, wonders how someone can have such control over magic. Some of them were in the rear, preparing an attack, and one shouts for them to stop accumulating mana and attack already. Enraged, he says he's going to make boar mincemeat, but the protagonist quickly realizes this and prepares to use fierce impulse again. The mages unleash their attack with all they have, causing an explosion. As the dust begins to settle, they look carefully. One of the guys asks if they hit, but before another could answer, 2 of them are struck right in the forehead. The one who remained standing looks at his fallen comrades while Damien hides in the smoke, until he finally appears with an evil grin, saying that the effect of that ability is incredible. The others who remain begin to wet themselves in fear, and one of them asks if this guy is really human, and if he's on the same level as them, because none of their attacks hit him. But one of the hooded figures, still confident, tells the group to hold out for 3 more minutes. Damien quickly notices that, and the mage continues concentrating his mana, saying that he's going to make battered boar with his energy beam. Meanwhile, Brian continues his stream, and the people in the chat are stunned and excited about the battle. Brian says that this is insane and wonders where this crazy guy came from. Excited, he yells for the fight to continue, while Wendy sighs, nervous. She screams, asking what he's doing, because now isn't the time to be admiring anyone. The streamer ignores her and starts interacting with the chat, asking what they think of the fight, but he is shocked to realize that he has over 236,000 viewers, and with that, he thinks it's a good opportunity. He turns to Wendy, pointing at the screen, and asks if she's ready. She, confused, asks what he's talking about. Brian points at the protagonist and asks if she's ready to defeat that guy. At the same time, the mage continues to concentrate his mana for the energy beam, but this is noticed by Damien, who watches carefully and realizes the mage is preparing something. He decides to go check it out and charges forward, causing some of them to run in panic, leaving only the brave one behind. The mage concludes that his mana is enough, and upon seeing Damien charging, He declares he'll end this once and for all. He then conjures his power, hitting the protagonist directly and creating a massive explosion in the area. Damien takes the hit and is electrocuted, leaving the streamers stunned. He then falls to the ground right in front of the mage, who starts smiling, saying that he managed to defeat him. Looking at the unconscious protagonist on the ground, he turns to his companions, who celebrate, saying they never doubted him. The hooded figure starts boasting, calling himself the tough guy. But suddenly something rushes past him, and the mages wonder what the hell that was. It was Damien, who appears and says that it hurt a bit. The mage can't believe what he's seeing, saying that it's impossible. The protagonist then lifts his mask and, smiling, asks what he means by impossible. He begins preparing an attack and admits that the guy has good instincts and is smart. The mage starts to panic, realizing the attack, but before he could say anything, his arms are sliced in two, causing him to scream in unbearable pain, while Damien says that he shouldn't have made such a fuss. The mage falls to the ground, armless, fearing for his life. The protagonist, with a sinister look, says that returning to kindness multiplied by 100 and revenge multiplied by 1,000 is what he believes in. With tears in his eyes, the young man begs for mercy and for him not to come any closer, but only the scream of the final blow echoes through the area. Brian is stunned by the scene, and Wendy turns away, saying she can't watch this insanity anymore, while Brian only thinks that he himself was planning to do this. Looking at the suffering mage, who is begging to be saved, he concludes that Damien is going too far. The protagonist says he will grant his wish to be saved, and starts pouring a healing potion on his head. Brian reflects that not even the devil has as much malice as Damien. The protagonist then begins to draw his sword, and says that healing that bug will make it better for him to beat him, and he starts smashing the mage, hitting harder than Mike Tyson. Eventually, he finishes him off, and tired, says that took longer than he expected. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he has committed the act of finishing off a player, and his current alignment is more negative than his bank account after paying alimony. He starts stretching and wonders why that guy even entered a fight he was obviously going to lose. Again, the system alerts him that his alignment is at the lowest possible, and he has received 184 sharp daggers and 209 beginner shirts, which excites the protagonist with the rewards. Another reward he receives is 113 pairs of rough leather pants and 98 sticks made of old wood. Damien, seeing all this, concludes that he got a lot of stuff and wonders how much all of that is worth, or how he'll use these items. Then, suddenly, he sees something that leaves him dumbfounded. A notification alerts him that he has earned nearly 3.5 million in gold coins. He starts smiling, and, thinking about the conversion rate of $1 for every 100 coins, he concludes that he made almost $4,000 from this little stunt. He opens the game bank and creates a post announcing that he's selling 3 million gold coins, fast and easy. He clicks to publish, and soon other players start responding, saying they'll buy everything, while another asks if negotiations are possible. This gets Damien excited, already thinking it will be easy to sell those coins. More offers come in, and he wonders which one to choose. Quickly, he selects one, and a notification appears confirming the transaction. His rank changes from normal to VIP. The protagonist comments that this was fast, and soon the total sale amount notification pops up. It's at that exact moment he realizes that playing Chronicles of Arcia is the future. Sometime later, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a man watches the city from inside a building. This is Alan Jacobs, CEO of the large company MCN and the streaming platform Switch. He enjoys his coffee until he hears someone calling. A man enters the room and says that the CEO of Switch, William Balmora, is looking for him. Alan replies that he's ready and tells the man to call him in. William enters, and the two greet each other formally. He sits down, takes a sip of coffee, and comments that Alan seems to be in a good mood today, asking how his condition is. Alan responds that it's good, thanks to him, and that he's curious about what William has to say. The CEO of Switch says that's great, and adds that he has some good news that will surprise him. He asks if Alan knows what Chronicles of Arcia is, which catches Alan off guard, prompting him to ask if it's a game. William asks if he really knows, and Alan responds that he's heard about the game, that it's getting a lot of hype, and that many of his streamers are playing it. He asks what's so special about it. William hands him a tablet and asks him to take a look. Upon grabbing the tablet, the chubby man immediately realizes it's the most watched clip of the week. As he watches the video, William says that he thinks they might have a potential new streamer and asks what Alan thinks. With some excitement, he continues, asking if Alan doesn't think this could be a great commercial investment. Sometime later, the protagonist calls his mother and says he just transferred some money to her account, emphasizing that he got a salary increase. His mother seems skeptical and replies that it's fine, but it's not like he has a lot of money. Damien feels a bit frustrated with the response and points out that he got a raise. He says goodbye and mentions that he will visit her soon. Opening the system, he feels happy that he can help his mother and wonders if he should use the rest of the money to invest. After Chronicles of Arcia and Evertale appeared, cryptocurrencies unexpectedly rose over the next 10 years, and Hyung wanted to use this current trend to solidify his financial position. Looking at the system's cryptocurrencies, he wonders if he should start with 3 million won and choose one of the future cryptocurrency options. Quickly, he selects one and clicks to buy. Suddenly, the system alerts him that the cryptocurrency he selected has dropped to its lowest point. His loss rate is 8%, then it's 13%, and then 27%. Damien nearly has a heart attack while receiving a notification that, because the loss rate was so high, the money he had was forcefully liquidated. He starts sweating cold, thinking he's screwed, and wonders how his 3 million disappeared in 3 seconds. He'll need to check the fluctuation chart again. The system alerts him that the future growth rate of Bitcoin is 1.4%, then 2.98%, and eventually 7.63%. Analyzing the chart, the protagonist starts to feel like an idiot, thinking someone must have interfered. He clenches his fist and reflects that there's only one way now. Crying, he says that all he has left now is the game. Sometime later, in Changchun, China, at the Zhengshan Company factory, a man bursts into the room, yelling that something bad has happened. The CEO of the company, Mingchen, irritated, lights a cigarette and asks what's so bad that he had to destroy the door, as he had already told him to stop doing that. He stands up and asks what happened, and the man, trembling, responds that it's about the game's bank. The CEO is shocked when he hears that 3 million gold coins have appeared. He says it's nonsense, and points out that it doesn't make sense. The young man, trembling, shows the tablet and asks him to take a look for himself. Mingchen grabs the tablet and starts sweating cold. He remembers it's been 2 weeks since he joined the gaming company Chronicles of Arcia, and for that business, he handled all the operational equipment and even received a huge investment from a superior who knew him. With that investment, he even bought a large batch of Galaxy M24 capsules. However, looking at the post from someone selling 3 million gold, he slams his hand on the table angrily and concludes that the amount is more than the value of his entire company. Terrified, he wonders how one person managed to gather that amount, and if more people like that keep appearing, the market price of the game currency will soon plummet. Suddenly, he smashes the employee's head with the tablet, asking why he didn't warn him about this earlier. While the young man tries to argue that he was speaking, Mingchen concludes that, at this rate, his company will crash, and it's just a matter of time before he goes bankrupt and won't be able to repay the investment. He yells, ordering the employee to find out who the hell is doing this, and the employee runs out saying he'll figure it out. Meanwhile, on a ship, the captain announces that they are setting sail. Damien, calm and lying down, reflects on how this island has been full of twists and turns, but thanks to that guy, Park Mandu, he managed to acquire many items. He opens the system to dismantle some of them, and the system alerts him that the dismantling was successful, acquiring 8 low-level iron ingots. The protagonist gets excited and wonders if, by collecting all of this, he could make more money than the players still stuck on the island. More notifications appear, informing him that he gained experience and reached level 20. Damien reflects that, aside from the items, the effect of the monstrosity title has also leveled up considerably. Looking at his stats, which have increased significantly, he concludes that so far, he has invested skill points into Fierce Rush and Corrupt Elixir, and wonders if he should take a look at the other skills. He notices that there are still several skills at level 1, while some have much higher levels, like Fierce Rush at level 5 and Corrupt Elixir at level 3. But looking at the skills that are still at level 1, he concludes that they're weak, since the zombie control skill can only summon chicks and hens, and for the voodoo doll skill, he needs to carry a doll item. Damien sits down, contemplating that he'll be able to use them one day, when suddenly, a notification alerts him about a new location. Everyone looks excitedly at the place they've arrived at. It's the dock of the Terra Kingdom on the central continent. Stepping onto solid ground, the protagonist says goodbye to the ship captain, wishing him good luck. Looking at the fortress in front of him, he feels like it's a familiar sight. This is one of the most lively kingdoms in the east of the Arcia continent. He walks through the area and soon finds people chatting in the game. Some are recruiting mages, others are asking where to go, and everyone seems very excited to be there. Damien observes and reflects that it's just like before, and despite the many people, no one has noticed his nature. Suddenly, a man starts shouting that they are recruiting people for a dungeon and are giving preference to doctors. If anyone wants to be a mercenary, They offer meals and lodging. Damien hears this and thinks that the guild recruitment is still the same, wondering where he's heading. Quickly, he finds the location and looks at the guild recruitment table. One of the recruiters is warning an adventurer about a platinum-class request, while Damien tries to push through the crowd, thinking he'll be late if he doesn't hurry. One of the recruiters calls out for a woman named Maria and asks her to bring all the adventurer applications from that day. This man is Hatsan, the manager of the Terra Kingdom Adventurers Guild branch. Moments later, the protagonist arrives, greeting Hatsan, who is surprised and says he would like to get a license. Hatsan comments that he seems like a novice adventurer, but has a good eye, since he researched his name. Damien responds that he should know Hatsan's name if he wants to become a mercenary. The bearded man agrees and gets excited about Damien. The Adventurers Guild has branches throughout the Arcia continent and serves as an accommodation used by both NPCs and adventurers. Some people pay to make requests, while others complete them to earn money. The main job of the Adventurers Guild is to mediate between the two parties, but not many people use this service correctly. Hatsan starts writing and points out that the protagonist needs a license to do that work. He asks if Damien really wants to sign up, which Damien promptly confirms. The bearded man then asks Maria to bring another application license for the guild and asks if the license is just for him or for a group. Damien responds that he is solo. Hatsan explains that the Adventurers Guild license is issued after a simple test. Behind that lobby, there is an arena with 10 stages, and depending on which stage he passes, ranks will be assigned. The protagonist then asks if what he's saying is that he needs to prepare first and come back to get a high score, and Hatsan confirms, saying that there's no need to explain further. He mentions that it's normal to take a few days to prepare, and Damien should return later. However, the protagonist ignores the advice and says he will go right now, as it won't make much of a difference. The recruiter, intrigued, asks if he's sure, because it will be difficult to prepare after entering. But Damien, confident, says that a test is just about using the same skills as always. Hatsan says he admires that confidence and asks him to follow him. Soon, a notification pops up about the license exam mission, which is an epic class task. If he quits the mission, he will automatically receive a Class Iron license. Damien looks excited at this and quickly starts following the recruiter. Shortly after, he arrives at the arena, which is completely packed. Maria announces that adventurers numbered 301 to 400 should prepare for the exam. Hatsan pats the protagonist on the shoulder and wishes him good luck in the fight, which he thanks him for. The arena gate begins to open, and there's a summoning portal that Damien considers a masterpiece, created by Master Arceus from the Tower of Mage Monsters. Maria announces that the exam area is beyond that door, and that they will proceed after defeating the summoned monsters. She explains that there are 10 stages in total, so if they can't continue, they should simply shout that they give up. The adventurers become nervous hearing this, but Damien knows that the monsters are actually an illusion created by the Mages Guild, though there isn't much difference between them and real monsters. And most of the Adventurers Guild requests involve monsters, so this is a practical method. Maria then shouts that the exam will begin, and immediately a noise starts rising, making everyone alert, wondering if they're really about to start. The noise intensifies, and dust begins to fill the space within the gate. Suddenly the monsters emerge fiercely, causing panic among some adventurers. The protagonist looks apprehensive at the start of the test. Screams are heard, and desperation takes over. The adventurers wonder if this is too dangerous. However, Maria announces through the megaphone that there is no reason to fear, as it's all just an illusion magic, and announces that participants numbered 401 to 500 should prepare. In shock, they wonder if it's their turn, while Damien, calm, begins to warm up. The participants continue shouting that they'll be slaughtered and that Maria is lying when she says it's just a test. She asks them not to misunderstand and explains again that the license exam is conducted in stages, where after eliminating the monsters, they will proceed to the next phases. Those who are not happy with the evaluation method can leave the testing area, but doing so will cause them to lose their adventurer license. One of the adventurers remains suspicious, while another points out that it's just a game, and the worst that can happen is dying and respawning in 60 hours. Pointing to the gate with a slightly sinister smile, she says that now they will begin the next exam. They start moving forward and hear an announcement welcoming them to the summoning portal, where there are a total of 10 stages in the license exam. In each stage, they must eliminate the monsters. Once they eliminate all the monsters in a stage, the gate to the next will open. For adventurers who are not in a group, if they don't defeat a single monster, they will be eliminated. And those who are about to enter can prepare for the exam, as there are 10 minutes until the next exam begins. Damien, analyzing the situation, notices there are a total of 10 people in that testing area, and he doesn't recognize any of them. Another announcement says the exam is about to start and wishes everyone good luck. The protagonist asks if it's finally starting and reflects that, for a summoning portal license exam, besides defeating the monsters, there should be a real battle system where participants also fight each other. He wonders if they intentionally didn't tell the participants about this. The participants start talking among themselves about the test, each with worse usernames than the other, like, "Please buy me chicken," and "Lily Bong Bong." Among them, a woman tells her husband that she's scared, and he replies they'll get out of there quickly. Suddenly, someone arrives, greeting them. His in-game nickname is Knight, and he says that when people bump into each other, it's destiny speaking, and asks if they want to do the test together. He points out that if they manage to pass the last stage, they'll start as silver class instead of iron. The protagonist, noticing the young man, realizes his armor is very rare and expensive. He introduces 3 more people to the couple, explaining that they're his group members, and they've been playing together since the game's open beta. Smiling, he says that since they met like this, they should finish it together. And the woman, excited, agrees, thinking he seems quite trustworthy. Observing the scene, the protagonist concludes that the knight's social skills are indeed above average and wonders if his tongue is his true weapon. The young man looks aside, noticing a woman, and says there's still one person he hasn't met. The woman looks at him with a serious expression, seemingly suspicious of something. He begins to introduce himself, but she remains indifferent and says he's talking nonsense. The woman gets irritated and tells him to stop talking to her and leave, as she has no intention of joining a group of idiots. The knight tries to smooth things over by asking if she's being too rude, but she remains upset and tells him he looks like a gigolo. Suddenly, an announcement alerts them that the test is starting now, catching them by surprise. The monsters then begin to appear, furious, charging toward them. The knight draws his sword and warns everyone to get into position. The couple, at the back, looks apprehensive and says they will try, and if they all fight together they can do it, while the knight confidently says it will be easy as the guild's standards are low. Smiling, he continues, "The guild said they'd give them all a license, but it seems they're being underestimated." Suddenly, one of the monsters is hit in the chest, surprising the others, and even the knight wonders what happened. He realizes it was Damien, charging forward and saying, "One down," and attacking another with a powerful punch. The knight is in shock and screams, asking what he's doing, but the protagonist simply ignores him and charges forward, furious, while the handsome man stands frozen, watching, and with just that one strike, all the monsters are instantly eliminated. Soon, it is announced that the first stage has been completed, and the results of the test will be revealed. While Damien calmly scratches his head, it is announced that he scored 10 points on the test. With this, the second stage is unlocked, and the protagonist quickly advances to the next gate. The knight trembles with rage at Damien, contemplating that he has ruined all his plans, and now won't have a monopoly on the points. He rushes after the protagonist and starts shouting, asking why he defeated all the monsters alone while he was talking. Damien sarcastically asks if there's a dog barking nearby. He reflects that the objective of the test is to see who defeats the most monsters, and the evaluation is based on fighting skills, but only those who survive until the end will receive the higher class license. Suddenly, the knight draws his sword and starts cursing at the protagonist. Preparing a strike, he says he'll finish off that crazy guy. Damien calmly takes one of his potions and throws it directly in the knight's face, causing him to scream that his eyes are burning. He starts swinging his sword blindly, unable to see, while Damien easily dodges the attacks. The knight manages to open one eye and begins attacking again, while the protagonist deduces that the guy wasn't just attacking randomly. Instead, he was sensing his presence, which is going to make things harder. The knight yells at his friends, asking why they're just standing there, and orders them to act immediately. Soon, all of his friends begin using their skills: healing, water eye, and fireball. After receiving the healing, the blind knight says his vision is returning to normal, and that he'll take care of that bastard. He uses a swordsman skill with his sword and leaps into a quick attack. But before he can strike, the protagonist simply disappears from his spot and suddenly appears, landing a powerful kick to his back, sending him flying. However, Damien doesn't stop and continues charging toward the woman with pink hair. He takes her down with a rear naked choke and says that if anyone shoots and eliminates the woman, they'll all be exterminated too. Her husband panics and begs him to let her go, while the bishop insults the protagonist. The knight starts waking up and tells his friends to attack, which leaves the husband in disbelief. He orders them again to attack quickly and shouts for them to hurry, while the blue-haired guy asks what he's talking about. He grabs the knight's arm and says he can't do that. The villain quickly throws him away, calling him another bastard, and continues shouting for them to attack at once. Meanwhile, the woman's husband, even though he's on the ground, begs them not to do it, leaving the three friends unsure of what to do. The green-haired adventurer asks what the hell they're doing and if they're crazy. With that, the knight raises his sword, becoming even angrier, and calls everyone pathetic, saying that's why they can't accomplish anything. He quickly eliminates the blue-haired guy, leaving his wife in despair as she watches her lifeless husband on the ground. The knight then starts running and jumps into a lethal strike, shouting for them to eliminate everyone. The protagonist observes the attack and gives a malevolent smile. The blow ends up killing the woman, and Damien comments that the guy is more of an idiot than he thought. He reflects that, usually, guys like him turn out to be nothing in the end. Once their abilities are recognized, they start to think too highly of themselves. Damien remembers previous moments and reflects that he didn't want to get involved with the knight while they were waiting for the test to start. Now, he's finally showing who he really is. As he thinks, the knight prepares another strike, but the protagonist senses it and, with a Jackie Chan-style kick, lands an impressive blow to the knight's neck, bringing him to his knees, screaming in pain. Immediately, his friends begin firing their abilities, all directed at the protagonist, who quickly turns around. He lands another powerful kick, hitting the knight squarely, sending him flying with the blow, while someone shouts for him to dodge. But when the knight looks back, it's too late. All the abilities fired by his friends hit him squarely in the back, knocking him down almost lifeless. The protagonist approaches him and says that he's unbearable, so he'll end it once and for all. He delivers an absurd mercy strike, causing the entire area to tremble. After that, he breathes a sigh of relief and says, "So this is how it ends," as the bully gets logged out of the game. Soon after, other notifications pop up, announcing that Umju's husband has logged out, as well as Roa and "Please buy me a chicken." Damien feels confused and wonders why all the members of the Knights group and even the individual participants have left, suspecting something unusual. Suddenly, he hears an agonized scream and, turning around, sees Bong Bong with a knife stabbed through her. Damien wonders what the hell is going on, and soon Lua also leaves the game, leaving only the two of them behind. The woman, named Gyumwa, asks the protagonist if he's the only one left. Damien, noticing the knife emitting a black energy, replies that he is. Suddenly, the system displays the knife's attributes, revealing an incredibly fast attack speed, rare class status, and several attack bonuses. Damien is stunned to realize that the sashimi knife has a +9 enhancement, which is insane. Gyumwa tells the protagonist that he's fairly decent for someone without any gear, but suspects he's hiding something. He retorts that she's talking nonsense. Quickly, he grabs the knight's sword, reflecting that this woman is going to be a tough opponent, and that it would be wise to take that sword just in case. Mockingly, she says he doesn't seem like a knight, and asks if he's ever even used a sword before. Damien replies that she's more talkative than he imagined, just like the deceased knight. She raises her knife and asks what he just said, while the protagonist reflects that exterminators are strong in close combat, and that he should be cautious with this woman. Looking at his sword, he says they don't have much time, so she should shut up and attack. This infuriates Gyumwa, and she quickly charges at him, declaring that she'll turn him into wild boar sushi. She lunges at him at full speed, leaps into the air, spins, and activates her ninja skill, Tiger's Fang. She delivers a monstrous strike against him, which he manages to block with the sword, causing a bright flash. While holding off the attack, he thinks that Gyumwa is incredibly strong, and that if he didn't have his titles and equipment, he'd already be dead. He tells her she has a good fighting spirit but weak arms. Still straining against the attack, she can't believe he managed to block one of her strongest skills, and asks who the hell he is. Quickly, she retreats and uses another ninja skill, Light Steps, creating a purple smoke that begins to spread across the area, leaving Damien unable to locate her. He deduces that it's a stealth skill, and imagines she used the same technique to take out the other participants. As she moves faster than the wind, Gyumwa laughs, saying that now he can do nothing but look around, lost. The protagonist thinks that although her reveal time is short, the skill doesn't completely prevent detection. He presumes she'll come from the right, at a 45-degree angle. Like in the movie The Matrix, he heroically dodges all her attacks and decides it's time to counterattack. Seeing him evade her strikes, she starts cursing him, asking how long he thinks he can keep dodging. Damien lands a powerful punch squarely on her, catching her off guard. Before delivering the punch, he had grabbed a vial, which breaks during the strike, leaving the woman terrified. She's thrown far back, slamming into the wall from the impact. After collapsing to the ground, she asks what kind of sorcery that was. Soon, the skill begins to take over her entire body, restricting the movement of her arms. Struggling to free herself, she starts screaming, asking what he did. Damien approaches and tells her she seems to misunderstand the situation. Exuding a terrifying aura, he says that if she keeps screaming, he'll make her disappear, but if she hands over her items, she can leave. Gumwa begins to cry, completely terrified, as Damien orders her to hand over all her items. With a vacant look, he tells her she has 10 seconds to decide. Moments later, the protagonist is already eyeing the items on the ground the way I look at a beer. She had left behind the knife, 6 pants, 6 steel protectors, and 6 discreet garter belts, which makes Damien conclude that these items are very rare. He starts picking them up and wonders what the hell a garter belt is when, suddenly, it's announced that the next test is about to begin. The gate opens, and Damien walks toward it, thinking that time is passing quickly. He realizes he needs to speed up and make progress. The monsters quickly appear, this time a mix of wolves and rats, and they are easily defeated by the protagonist using the knife he obtained. Minutes later, the system announces that he has already defeated 10 of the monsters and that the Level 2 test is complete, awarding him 10 points and unlocking the Level 3 test. Damien prepares, and when the system announces there are 10 minutes left before the next test begins, he says he doesn't want to wait and asks to start immediately. A screen appears asking if he'd like to skip the waiting period, and he answers yes every time. He starts walking toward the exam, and in the blink of an eye, he defeats all the monsters of that level with no difficulty. The system announces that the Level 7 test is complete, and Damien wonders what will come next. The Level 8 monsters appear quickly. They are lizard men, and one of them charges at the protagonist, ready to attack with an axe. However, Damien simply slides his sword and splits the monster into 2 parts, concluding that he can wield other players' weapons with mastery. Damien deduces that this is likely because he completed the gladiator mode before going back in time, a mode where the player must clear each level using only the equipment of others. He recalls earning the title of Grand Master of Weapons for being the first to finish all 100 levels. In a combat stance, he reflects that the body doesn't forget what it learns through intense training. He charges at the monsters and defeats them effortlessly, thinking that everything he learned is still clear in his memory. Suddenly, the system announces that he has defeated 10 ghost lizard men. Damien continues advancing, stepping on the head of a finished monster, and asks for the next level to begin. The gate to Level 9 opens, and the protagonist walks toward it with determination. Outside the test, Hatsan asks Maria, who was observing the test through a crystal ball, how the exam is going. She replies that nothing much is happening, that all the rookies are lost as usual, and he asks if there's no one good enough to go straight to the front lines. Maria also responds negatively. Hatsan asks if the standards are too high, and she says some of them could be used as human shields but wouldn't last long. Hearing this, he reflects that thousands of people show up for a license, yet it's still hard to find anyone acceptable for the guild. Maria adds that at least it's better than the early stages when people claimed to be from another world and were just hiding the battle machines, so Hatsan shouldn't be too ambitious. The explorer guilds accept members regardless of status or race, creating massive guilds, but the truly talented ones are usually recruited by the Royal Academy or the Magic Tower. As a result, high-level missions and tasks often go unfulfilled. Back in the guild hall, Hatsan lights a cigar and thinks they'll have to train the rookies from scratch, making this another laborious month. But suddenly, Maria, smiling, says there seems to be a special case, leaving Hatsan surprised. He contemplates how surprising this is, given that Maria Jones, known as strict and meticulous with years of experience, made such a comment, and he asks what's so special. She turns, saying that 9 people perished in the first level, but the remaining user is clearing Level 9 alone. Hatsan is shocked by the information and points out that even a normal adult human can handle goblins, but it's strange for 9 people to be eliminated. He asks if anyone gave up. She says no, and in any case, the average time this person takes per level is less than 3 minutes, fast enough to rank among the top 3 of the day. Hatsan, intrigued, stands up and asks how the 9 people were eliminated. The woman responds that no one but her can intervene in the evaluation, and asks what he thinks that means, leaving Hatsan even more suspicious. Maria, with a bizarre smile, confirms that the person she's referring to exterminated everyone else in the first level, and is now finishing Level 9. Meanwhile, in the test, it's announced that Level 9 is complete, and Level 10 is opening. Damien already looks a little tired and dirty from the previous battles, and as he looks around, he thinks something is off because, according to the memories of his past life, Level 8 was slimes, and Level 9 was skeletons. But now there were orcs and wicked elves, which are more difficult. However, he gets up, heads to the next test, and says it doesn't matter as long as they give him the rewards. Reaching the door, he stops and reflects that, according to his memory, the next enemy would be a slime king, a mud goblin, or a bloody goblin, none of which would be difficult. Smiling, he grows curious to know what rank he will receive. Suddenly, he notices something that puts him on high alert, and stunned, thinks that it's impossible. A giant phantom minotaur appears before him. The monster is a normal type, but its level is unknown. Damien stares at the beast, irritated by the unexpected appearance of a creature that most explorers wouldn't even dare to face. The monster begins roaring furiously, while the protagonist concludes that he has no choice but to defeat it. He starts preparing a spell, muttering irritably that it'll be quick. Locking eyes with the red-eyed beast, he charges forward, disappearing from the monster's sight, which starts searching for him. Suddenly, Damien appears beside the creature, saying he'll make a fine barbecue out of that fat bull. He hurls his corrupted elixir at the monster, hitting it in multiple spots. Suddenly, the system announces that the Phantom Minotaur's defense power has decreased. Damien lands on the ground and begins running around it faster than Lightning McQueen, enraging the beast. The monster delivers a powerful punch, shattering the ground, but Damien jumps again, swiftly landing a right cross directly on its head. Grinning, he says he'll soon be enjoying some filet mignon. The Minotaur falls to the ground from the powerful punch but quickly recovers, now looking even angrier. As the protagonist moves in for another strike, the Minotaur crosses its arms, emitting monstrous energy. It enters an overdose state, dragging its hoof across the ground in a display of rage. Damien prepares to shoot his blowpipe, but as soon as the bull notices, it launches a devastating ground attack, breaking everything and hurling rocks toward Damien. Startled, he looks at the creature and sees it emitting an overwhelming aura and pressure while roaring furiously. The monster grabs a rock and abruptly throws it at Damien, who dodges it with indignation, saying those attacks are too slow. He begins to feel excited by the challenge of the battle, and, looking at the Minotaur, which continues throwing rocks, reflects that the rapid beating of his heart and the thrilling sensation are his fighting spirit. Charging at the beast, he remarks that he'll see just how tender that bull will become. The Minotaur, undaunted, attempts another powerful punch, but Damien dodges easily. Leaping to the beast's head level, still airborne, he is impressed by how much the Minotaur is enduring and recalls the weak spot of this type of monster. He then prepares his blades and delivers a cross strike directly to the neck. The creature falls to its knees from the deep cut, and Damien lands on the ground, completing his move. He looks back and asks if it's finally over, only for the system to suddenly announce that he has defeated the Phantom Minotaur. The loudspeakers soon declare that the Level 10 test is complete, while the protagonist watches the beast disintegrate and reflects that he hadn't expected that type of monster, but found it less difficult than he imagined. He looks at his sword, thinking that he doesn't even know what level he's at anymore, and that he has undoubtedly grown much stronger compared to when he first started the game. With determination in his eyes, he resolves to keep moving forward. Damien begins walking heroically toward the arena's exit as it's announced that his total score is 100 and the test is over. Shortly after, outside the arena, the protagonist arrives at the guild's reception, drawing everyone's attention. Hatsun remarks that the test must have been quite a journey. Smiling, Damien responds that it truly wasn't easy. The bearded man then stares at him, contemplating that the test was completed in record time and that Damien ranked first in all evaluation categories. With his decision to eliminate the other test participants, he became quite popular among the staff. Suddenly, Maria arrives, excited and loudly declaring that the guild needs Damien at all costs because his abilities are extremely rare. Hatsun agrees but hesitates to make such a quick decision. He tells the protagonist that his results were impressive, though he's bothered by Damien's actions in eliminating the other participants. The protagonist responds that he's good at judging people, and that all those he eliminated were bad, though he usually doesn't act that way. The bearded man smirks, saying that makes him sound even crazier, leaving Damien speechless. He reflects that his reasoning isn't random. Having played for so long, he can easily read people. He thinks that if Hatsun doesn't hire him, it will mean the end of his license. The recruiter says Damien doesn't seem like someone who would cause trouble but insists that such behavior cannot happen again, as a guild member's sword should never be directed at another human. Damien promptly agrees. Anxiously crossing his fingers, Hatsun asks if he would accept the license and work as a mercenary for the Adventurers Guild. Smiling brightly, the protagonist says it would be a great honor. The bearded man also smiles slightly, and they shake hands as Hatsun declares that, from that moment on, Damien is a member of the guild, and that he's looking forward to working together. Shortly afterward, the system confirms that Damien has obtained a license and is now affiliated with the Adventurers Guild. Damien kneels, celebrating that he has finally achieved one of his goals. He looks at his gold rank 5 license, his eyes sparkling with joy at finally being recognized as part of the guild. Now, he will be able to gather information and take on missions from across the continent. Suddenly, he receives a notification that he has earned the title of Record Time Finisher, making him even happier. This title grants an additional 3% attack speed and movement speed. Hatsan walks toward him and asks if he likes the class he received, to which Damien confirms with a nod. The recruiter, impressed, reflects that the gold class is awarded to those who complete the most challenging missions, something never seen before. He explains to Damien that gold class licenses are given to individuals who are worth 10 iron class members or 3 silver class members, and that, with it, he will be able to take on very high-ranking missions. Presenting 3 missions, Hatsan asks the young man to carefully choose his first one. The protagonist picks up the missions and notices they are all gold class. Deep exploration of the underground canals of the royal palace, cultivation of dragon's breath. Suddenly, he shows one of them to Hatsan and asks what it's about. The red-bearded man responds that it's about a village called Cornale, where sheep have been disappearing. He explains that the government issued the mission, but since the village is in the middle of nowhere, they didn't want to send their precious knights. Damien promptly concludes that it would be better for the government to deal with it using money. The recruiter removes his glasses and explains that the sheep keep vanishing, possibly due to a pack of wolves. The protagonist asks if he can do whatever it takes to solve the problem, and Hatsan confirms. With this, Damien thinks that this type of mission is usually simple. It's likely just someone stealing the sheep, which wouldn't be an issue to eliminate and fabricate something for the report. Hatsan hands him the mission paper, emphasizing that whatever he does needs to satisfy both the village and the government, and asks if he'll take the mission. Damien confirms. Soon, the system informs him that the mission, the village where the sheep vanished, has been created, and another screen pops up, asking if he accepts it. Confidently, he accepts, thinking how excited he is about taking on a gold-class mission. With that, he heads off, saying he'll be back soon, and Hatsan wishes him good luck. Turning around, visibly excited, Damien thanks him. Sometime later, Damien, now in a different location with the mission paper in hand, wonders if he's arrived at the place. Suddenly, the system notifies him that the new location information has been updated and that his current location is Celis Valley 3. He looks around, admiring the beauty of the place, and is informed that the world map information has been updated. Opening the map, he searches for Cornale Village and confirms that it lies between the Terra Kingdom and Pharma Estate, also known as the Ivory Tower of Truth. Damien thinks it's close, but he realizes there's still a long journey ahead, which explains why the government didn't send knights there. Regardless, it's a gold-class mission. However, he doesn't have any group members or equipment for the task. Intrigued, he reflects on how little time he's had since starting the game and how he still doesn't have basic gear. He concludes that joining mercenaries isn't even an option for now, since equipment is crucial for them. As he resumes walking, the protagonist declares that it's better to go alone than to waste time looking for people. He reassures himself that it's definitely not because he failed to find anyone to form a group. Snapping his fingers, he gets an idea. If he can't find group members, he'll create them. Damien decides to use his zombie control skill, which is at level 1 and allows him to summon relevant monsters with 50% of their total stats. He begins casting the skill, creating a pentagram on the ground that emanates strong energy. Once finished, he pauses, wondering if it worked, until the system notifies him that the summoning was successful. Soon, a creature appears, asking if Damien is its master. It's none other than a chick, which says it's a pleasure to meet him. Damien crouches down, frustrated, and asks what the hell it is. The chick, annoyed, replies that it's the summon. Damien approaches and starts poking its head, asking if it's useful for anything, as he couldn't imagine something so useless being summoned. The creature, extremely irritated, tells Damien to go to hell. Suddenly, the system prompts Damien to choose a name. Scratching his head, he says it's not worth naming such a useless thing. He stands up and asks if the chick already has a name, to which it replies that it was just born. Damien then suggests the name Bolota, acorn, which further infuriates the little creature. He justifies it by saying it's because the chick is round and cute, leaving the creature wanting to give up on life. Out of nowhere, the chick jumps toward him, saying it heard something strange. This marks the moment when the protagonist's first summon was born. After that, they continued their journey, with Damien emphasizing that the creature should stay close, as he would abandon it if it lagged behind. After a while, they stop and check the map, realizing they are now in Celis Valley 6. Damien concludes there must be a shortcut nearby. Quickly he finds it and begins sliding down the mountain in a Bear Grylls style. The system informs him that the location has been updated and they are now in Farber Forest, also updating the world map information. Damien looks around and reflects that it's not a popular place since it's far from the village and holds no real value. Meanwhile, the chick wonders what the hell they are doing there. Suddenly, Damien notices comments in the game chat, advising him to skip Farber Forest because the mobs there don't take any damage. Another user mentions it's not worth it and questions who designed those mobs. Reflecting on this, Damien realizes that the main reason players avoid this area is the monsters that inhabit it. The system informs him that Farber is home to cocoons residing deep within the valley. These monsters, found easily in trees, belong to the insect species and are level 25. Damien looks up and observes many of them, concluding that attacking and defending against them will be difficult due to their height. However, since he loves challenges, he decides to try. Approaching some of the creatures, he pulls out his hidden elixir potion and prepares to throw it. With force, he launches it at his target, hitting it perfectly. The insects soon feel the effects, causing them to fall to the ground. The system notifies that the Farber's defensive exoskeleton has decayed and its defense power has decreased. Damien immediately approaches with his blowpipe and confidently jokes that they look like fruit falling from a tree. A Farber notices his approach and tries a surprise attack, but the protagonist easily dodges and strikes with his blowpipe, piercing the insect in 3 different spots. A notification pops up, indicating that the creature has been poisoned. The insect spins around wildly, accelerating the spread of the venom until it is finally eliminated. Damien approaches, thanking it for the meal. The system promptly announces that he has defeated a Farber, gained experience, and obtained a hardened outer shell. He celebrates and rushes to pick up the item. The hardened outer shell is a high-class ingredient dropped by monsters. It's as tough as stone yet lightweight, making it potentially valuable. With the shell in hand, Damien contemplates its high demand, noting that stock can't keep up. Although he also gained experience, this was precisely why he was here. In the game chat, a user mentions they'll buy every hardened shell available, regardless of the amount. Another offers to trade mana powder for shells, while a third bids 300 gold per shell, begging for a sale. Holding the valuable item, Damien concludes that everyone is desperate to buy it, and since more people are showing interest, the price will likely rise, making him a millionaire if he monopolizes the supply. Wasting no time, he pushes forward to gather as many as possible, running headfirst into his gold rush. Sometime later, he encounters more insects, and excited, remarks that he's hit the jackpot. Counting how many are there, he calculates they could be worth hundreds of thousands of coins. With supreme confidence, he orders the creatures to come down and shed their shells if they want to stay alive. The monsters glare at him as if thinking, "The audacity of this guy!" Without hesitation, they all attack at once. Damien grows uneasy as he sees the attacks closing in and activates his fierce impulse. This makes him extremely fast, allowing him to see and dodge every attack while clearly observing all the monsters' movements. Quickly, he prepares one of his skills, declaring that they'll come down one way or another, and launches his attack, successfully hitting the target and causing the monsters to fall instantly. The system then notifies him that the Farber's defense power has decreased. Feeling confident, Damien charges at them with his blowpipe. He asks what happened to the faces of the insects, and suddenly they start attacking him again, catching Damien off guard. Watching the attacks coming toward him, he is shocked and realizes he let his guard down. He thinks he's screwed, as he won't be able to dodge or defend while the chick leaps off his head. Quickly, Damien deduces that he'll have to try to block, and as he wonders how he's going to do that, he notices the chick perched on his wrist with an expression that suggests it has a plan. Intrigued, he observes the way his creature is looking at him. Suddenly, the Farbers are startled by something. Damien begins spinning the chick at high speed and hurls it toward the insects like a wild projectile. The chicken manages to absorb all the attacks, leaving Damien stunned. Without hesitation, he also charges into the fray. He leaps, prepares a strike with his sword, and shocking the monsters, shouts, "Checkmate!" Afterward, the system notifies him that he has gained experience and reached level 25. After his merciless attack, Damien, exhausted, sits on the ground in front of the defeated monsters, commenting that he could have been defeated in that battle since it's been a long time since he felt such pressure and had to fight with everything he had. Suddenly, the chick starts yelling at him, irritated, asking why Damien threw it like a rock. He responds that he didn't have any other choice. Just then, the system notifies him that he has obtained more hardened shells. Looking around, Damien notices several of them and starts counting, thinking it's a true gold mine. With a mischievous smile, he calls out to Bolota, who asks what he wants. Damien says he'll give it 1 seed for every hardened shell it collects, which leaves the chick ecstatic. Quickly, Bolota starts picking up all the shells, faster than someone rushing home from work. Suddenly, A system screen informs him that sometimes a farber can drop 2 hardened shells. Holding one in his hands, the protagonist reflects that, given the market demand, it's definitely worth the risk, as these shells are currently worth 500 gold coins each. Remembering his past life, he knows that their value will double soon if everything happens as before. Damien reflects that, in truth, nothing has changed between the game of his past life and the current one. If he can use his memory wisely, he'll have an easy life. He comments to Bolota that the farber's level is around 25, the same as his, so he won't receive any level penalties. The chick asks what he's talking about, while Damien, collecting the shells, reflects that he originally planned to reach Cornel Village in 4 days, but will change his plans. He decides to spend 2 days gathering as many shells as possible and use the remaining 2 to reach the village. Clenching his fist with great confidence, he declares that they're going to make a fortune. The chick, excited, raises a wing in agreement. Moments later, 3 men stand atop a hill, and one of them hears sounds coming from the forest below. He asks what that noise is, but suddenly gets slapped by another man with a scar on his face, who demands to know what he's looking at. The man responds that he thought he heard something. The one who slapped him is Liang Chao-ming, from the Zhengsan Company, leader of Team 1 for the week. He asks the young man if he's gone crazy, saying there's no one else in the area besides them. The gray-haired man tries to argue that he definitely heard something, but their leader retorts that, whoever it is, they'll be eliminated anyway. Liang continues walking, saying that's enough nonsense because they have a long way to go. The young man, upset, mutters, "Fine." Liang turns to the group and says they need to complete the day's quota quickly. The men, energized, agree and raise their swords. Afterward, they head deeper into the forest, and the slapped man asks if the leader is sure they'll manage to collect everything today. Liang responds that, whether they do or not, they'll have to figure it out. He reflects that this forest is hidden and dangerous, which is why most players avoid taking such a risk. However, considering the value, hardened outer shells are the most profitable item for the Zhengsan startup. Moments later, Liang realizes that hunting farbear is harder than he expected, but the important thing is to collect the shells. He comments that he's exhausted and suggests they finish quickly so they can log out. Then he asks where the caterpillars are. One of his men, in shock, points ahead, saying they're right there. Irritated, Liang asks if he's crazy or blind because, suddenly, he sees the insects already defeated and harvested right in front of him, leaving him stunned. Furious, Liang demands to know who the bastard was that passed through before him. He thinks that, even though this isn't an exclusive Zhengsan area, they eliminate any users they encounter here to monopolize the shell supply. Enraged, he grabs one of his subordinates by the collar and orders him to find whoever took out the caterpillars. The man, terrified, promises to locate the culprit. Soon, he spots someone collecting the hardened shells. He approaches the protagonist, demanding to know what the hell he thinks he's doing. Damien, distracted, doesn't notice Liang approaching and mutters to himself that he forgot to grab some shells, heading off to look for more. Liang, furious, can't believe what he's seeing. Looking at Damien, who has a chick on his shoulder, he notices the stranger is only equipped with a cloth around his waist and a boar's head, wondering how someone who looks like an NPC got in here. The group leader shouts, calling him a damned boar, and asks what he's doing there. The protagonist calmly turns and asks if there's a problem. Looking ahead, he senses an enormous pressure emanating from the group of angry men who demand to know where he thinks he is and tell him to hand over everything he's taken if he doesn't want to be buried alive. Confused, Damien asks what they're talking about, adding that he can't even tell if they're from North Korea or China. Note, they're speaking with a heavy accent. Liang points at him and asks if he knows who he is. Damien says he doesn't. Liang introduces himself as Liang Chao-ming, and Damien finds the name familiar. Searching his memory, he tries to remember where he's heard it before until it suddenly clicks. He asks if Liang isn't the leader of the Factory of Evil, mentioning that he read about Liang on a community forum before. Both Liang and his henchmen are stunned by Damien's comment. Meanwhile, in the game chat, a user remarks that Celas Valley is screwed and asks who these Zhengsan startup guys are. Another responds that it's obviously a farming factory. Suddenly, Damien points a finger at the group and, with a cold expression, declares that the Chinese farming factory is destroying other users and that they're total garbage. The group starts to smile, and Liang responds that it's true, but Damien discovered it too late. Quickly, the group surrounds him, saying it's the end for him, and that his life will end here. Surrounded by many, Liang asks if Damien understands the situation now. However, the protagonist, completely unbothered, just scratches his ear and asks if they're paying rent to be there. Hearing this, Liang becomes even more enraged and demands to know what Damien just said. Damien, exuding a sinister aura, replies that Liang should behave before he really gets angry unless the group wants to sleep an eternal sleep. Immediately, Liang orders his men to take him down, making his subordinates uneasy. He points his crossbow and shouts again for them to kill the boar. Liang fires an arrow, but the protagonist dodges it effortlessly, mocking the attack. Suddenly, Damien charges forward, leaving Liang in shock. He grabs Liang by the arm and tells him he's too predictable. With a terrifying smile, the protagonist declares that they're overly confident in their all-versus-one approach, just as confident as he is in his one-on-one. The thugs, upon seeing the scene, quickly draw their weapons and demand that he release Liang. Without hesitation, they shoot their arrows. Damien, noticing this, starts dodging them all, even while holding the redhead's head, and asks why they are shooting at him. He then releases the hostage and charges toward the men, easily wiping out a few with his sword. The others, noticing the protagonist approaching, shout that he is coming fast. One of them prepares a sword strike and calls him a damn boar. As he attacks, it is completely blocked by Damien, who uses his steel wrist guard, causing the thug to panic as he realizes this would be his end. The protagonist quickly takes down the two in front of him with a single strike, while Liang begins to recover and grabs his crossbow. He lies on the ground, his body riddled with arrows, trying to aim at Damien. But the protagonist notices that he is scheming something and starts running toward him, completely ignoring the other members of the group. He leaps nimbly and, still in the air with a dark look, says that Liang will not escape alive, brutally eliminating him. Meanwhile, at the Jengsun cultivation factory, an employee bursts through the door, shouting for his boss, who turns around angrily and throws the ashtray, hitting the young man in the head. Mingchen yells, asking why he is there, and warns him that if it's not something urgent, he's in trouble. The man says he has a big problem, and the boss asks what it is. The ashhead warns that Weak One's team has just been annihilated, which shocks Mingchen. He starts trembling with rage and asks the man to repeat the information, which he promptly does. The boss, enraged, punches the table, asking how this is possible, as there were many skilled men in that team. Punching the table like a gorilla, he asks if it was the Japanese, and the man, still on the ground, says no. Mingchen then goes up to the young man, grabs him by the collar, and asks who the hell dared to attack them. Panicked, he responds, asking if Ming remembers the guy who deposited 3 million gold coins into the game bank, a Korean with the username Jinsung123. Just as he was saying that this user did it, he takes a blow to the face. The man falls to the ground again, trembling with fear, while the boss asks if he was crazy, as it made no sense. Mingchen questions if what he's saying is that everything was done by just one person, throwing a nuclear-level item into the game bank and completely annihilating Team 1, which the employee, shaking in fear, confirms to be true. Pointing a piece of wood at him, the boss says he better explain what happened, leaving no detail out. Meanwhile, inside the game, a notification of experience gain appears, followed by another indicating level 30. Damien, with his creature on his shoulder, gets excited about it, noting that he gained a lot of experience. He looks back, seeing the trail of destruction he left, and says that this was pretty obvious, considering he eliminated about 50 players there. Suddenly, the system alerts that he obtained a hard outer shell and basic steel, making Damien happy for receiving rare items in addition to the experience. Other notifications appear, saying he obtained an elf branch and rubber tree sap. Looking at the war zone, the protagonist reflects on the amount of loot from a single fight, but assumes that many of those items were also stolen. In his inventory, there were many items of all rarities, and almost 192,000 gold coins. Looking at this, he smiles and admits that he never would have gained all that alone without looting. Damien thinks he can make millions if he can exchange it for money, and could make hundreds of millions if he just keeps an eye on the exchange rate, not having to worry about sending money to his mother for a while. He begins to exchange all his goods for money, but before that, suddenly, the system notifies him that he used the Apocalypse Summoning, the Black Alliance book. Bolata asks him what that was, and the protagonist responds that he'll make some equipment. The book's options are Draculo, Rune Page, Item Value Judgment, Item Extraction, Item Synthesis, Item Creation, and Item Dissection. Damien selects Item Dissection, and soon the system informs him that he dissected the hunter's sword, light bow, and leather armor. As he dissects the items, he reflects that it's good to sell all the items, but he needs some high-rank ingredients. He continues searching for items in his inventory until a new notification appears, saying that he earned the title of Lone Hyena. This confuses him, as he's never seen that title before. This title is given to those who loot 10,000 items from other users and provides many status improvements for item detection. Damien is stunned, realizing he's already looted 10,000 items or more. and concludes that it makes sense that this is the first time he's seeing that title. Before the regression, he only fought in large-scale battles with alliances or organizations, so he never had the time to pick up dropped items and didn't need them either. The protagonist wonders if he really looted that much, and Balota adds that he completely cleaned the ground. But suddenly, he realizes something, and, darkly, deduces that with this title, it would be better to eliminate other users than hunt monsters. There were about 50 men there, and if they work in shifts day and night, they must have over 100. Furthermore, if he assumes that a cultivation factory farms hundreds of items per day, the money he could make from it would be astronomical. Damien then starts walking, and arriving at a cliff, reflects that after all that loss, Jung-san Company will be forced to come after him, so he'll have to deal with them anyway. The protagonist clasps his hands and excitedly says that he will start working with them too. Sometime later, a man hits a tree saying it's madness. The game time was 35 hours, 33 minutes, and 23 seconds. Team 1 of Jung-san's night shift was looking for Chung Tingbao, and everyone on the team was frustrated for not finding any sign of humans. The leader wonders how long he will have to chase that Korean. They walk through the forest, talking among themselves about wiping out Damien, and someone asks why they don't use return spells, as it would be easier. Chung replies that they are too expensive, and tells them to stop asking stupid questions and look around. But suddenly, he stops and realizes he's never heard that voice before. Thinking that everything is too quiet, he turns around and notices that he's alone. Everyone on the team had disappeared. He draws his sword in shock, thinking he didn't hear anything happening. Suddenly, he hears someone say it's better not to point that sword. It was Damien, perched on a branch, asking why he isn't attacking, leaving Chang speechless. The protagonist then advances, saying that if Chang isn't going to attack, it's better to take a nap. After that, Chung Tingbao begins to wake up confused, until he realizes he's tied up and wonders what happened. Looking at his hands, he notices there are apparently irritated chicks there, and one of the chicks says the prisoner is awake, telling another chick to inform the captain. The mini-chick runs off to inform the captain, while a voice asks if he's sure he tied the idiot up properly, making Chang recognize that the voice belonged to the Korean he had been hunting. Meanwhile, Damien calmly fiddles with the system and argues with one of his creatures. Tingbao starts shaking, thinking that he needs to get out of there immediately, but the protagonist notices and comments that the patient finally woke up. He asks Balota to roll up the patient's sleeves. Suddenly, he reveals 3 needles laced with some kind of poison and says that Chang doesn't need to be afraid, as they haven't even started yet. Damien advances to attack, emphasizing that it's going to burn a little. He shoots at Chang, who only raises his arms to try to protect his face. Soon, the system notifies that Tingbao has been poisoned, and his vitality is slowly decreasing. He falls to the ground thrashing, while the protagonist mocks him, saying it doesn't hurt that much. With revenge in his eyes, he says that this was just the beginning. After eliminating the man, Damien obtains a wanderer's flint, an old hinge belt, and 3,888 gold coins. After all of that, Damien lies on the ground, saying that he's exhausted. As the team members begin to log out, he reflects that he's gotten rid of all 100 members of Jung-san from both the day and night shifts without resting for 48 straight hours, and he's even more tired from summoning all the chicks. He decides to open the status window, and the screen shows that Necromancy is still at level 1. The protagonist never thought that the status of the summoned creatures would be so low, since there's no limit to how many he can summon. Moreover, summoning skills usually have a time limit, or the summons disappear once all the mana is used. With his summons around him, he reflects that the ability doesn't seem to have any of those restrictions, and the summons don't disappear until they run out of health. Damien then tells them that they should go home since the job here is done, but one of them responds that the realm of souls is boring, and it's better here. He reflects that the specs of the chicks are very weak, but with enough mana and invocation time, he can have endless chicks, and they're useful if there are many of them, like when he used them to find the Jung-san members. Looking around, he says that, anyway, there are none of them here now. The protagonist remembers the battle and says it was very fun eliminating and looting all of them, and the funniest part was their reactions when they were running out of life. He continues reflecting that he managed an elimination just with the poisonous needle attacks, without even needing to use his corrupt elixir, and that necromancy would be better, as avoiding the penalty for finishing someone off is difficult. Damien then opens his status window and uses the Apocalypse Summoning, the Black Alliance book, saying that the items created with the book are much more expensive, but they also have greater efficiency and better specs. He begins flipping through the book, looking for a formula. Suddenly, he looks down and calls for Balota and the other chicks. Showing a page from the book, he asks if they would like to try it. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, Pundong, a Chinese man, walks, asking how this happened. He stops and remarks that this is somewhat concerning. This man is Jiang Wei, president of the Kiri Business Society. Jiang lights a cigarette, reflecting that the Zhengsan startup is one of his money laundering sources, and one of his Youngs personally led the development, so he'll leave the funds as an investment. Since it was a small amount of money, it doesn't affect him, but the fact that one person exterminated everyone is definitely concerning. He puts the phone in his pocket, concluding that he'll have to eliminate the one responsible for this. From inside the building, he calls one of his security guards who was on guard outside, giving him an order. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man runs as if there's no tomorrow. In the call, Zheng says that dozens of his companions were killed by a single user, and in the forest, the man continues to run desperately, until he notices a circle emitting lightning above him, and when he looks back, he sees the lightning getting closer. Suddenly, he jumps and manages to escape a massive explosion, but ends up being hit in the knee. The man falls to the ground, screaming in pain, as the one who attacked him approaches and says he didn't think he would dodge that. It's none other than King Arthur, who appears to be extremely powerful, and says that this is impressive. He asks if the man is the useless captain, and the man, terrified and trembling, begs him not to come closer. Arthur displays his staff and asks why he is afraid, if this is exactly what they wanted. The staff has various very strong attributes, and is a rod that contains the energy of lightning. The staff begins to emit more and more energy, and seeing the man on the ground, completely terrified, the king says he likes the expression on his face. With a wicked smile, he asks the young man to tell the others. He raises the staff, emitting lightning everywhere, and points out that if they want to defeat him, they'll need to bring the whole alliance. Then, he shoots the lightning at the man, who begs for his life with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, in a calmer place, Damien starts scratching his ear and comments that someone must be talking about him behind his back. Bolota, joking, asks if his master is hunting for gold in his ear. Suddenly, a window appears notifying that the location information has been updated, and Damien concludes that they've finally arrived. He then begins to head toward Cornel Village, commenting that the air is nice and fresh. Soon after, as he arrives at the village, the villagers notice his presence while he walks calmly, but he feels that there's a lot of hidden tension in the area. After reaching a staircase, he feels relieved that he arrived in time, as he had wasted a lot of time dealing with the Zhengsan men. Despite gaining many treasures and experience, it's not good to be late for his first mission. The protagonist knocks on the door, asking if anyone is there. Suddenly, an older man with a mustache opens the door, asking who it is, and Damien explains that he is from the Adventurers Guild and asks if he made a government support request. The man, named Albert, is the village chief of Cornel and is surprised that help has finally arrived, inviting Damien in. The man quickly grabs a mug of beer and asks him to sit, saying he must have traveled a long way, and the protagonist reflects that the chief's concern for him, a foreigner, disappeared instantly, so the problem must be quite serious. Albert begins to explain that the village's sheep continue to disappear, and the villagers are also worried because the numbers keep declining. He asks Damien to be understanding, even when things are tense. The protagonist questions how many have disappeared, and the chief answers that it's 20 per week, and that he can't even imagine how many in total. Damien then asks when it started, and he replies that it began a month ago. The protagonist, intrigued, asks who usually tends to the sheep, and if there are shifts, and Albert answers that there is an orphan named Joseph who takes care of all of them. Although he's somewhat problematic, it's hard to tell when he's actually tending to the sheep, and when he's just playing around. According to him, it was wolves. Damien responds that if 20 are disappearing every week, that makes sense. Albert explains that the boy has been playing pranks on everyone since he was younger, so he always lied about wolves appearing, which made the villagers stop liking him. Now, he has been imprisoned because the villagers think it was him. Desperate, Albert grabs the protagonist's hand, saying that the sheep keep disappearing even with the boy in prison, so it must be something else. He begs Damien to do something because if it doesn't stop, the whole village will starve. Damien then asks to meet the boy, which surprises Albert, who is teary-eyed, and asks which boy he's talking about. Smiling, Damien says he wants to meet Joseph, and assures him that he'll make sure to resolve the problem quickly. After the conversation, Damien leaves to search for the boy and wonders if he's in the right place. But soon ahead, he notices 2 guards standing outside a tiny house, with the door blocked. Moreover, he can hear the sound of screams from inside. Inside the house, Joseph is banging on the door, begging them to open it and swearing that he's not the one at fault. One of the guards responds that the chief ordered him to stay quiet until the problem is resolved. Watching the scene, Bolota asks what's wrong with those humans, and if all the humans there are like that. Damien points out that they probably think Joseph is the one to blame. Reflecting, he concludes that he only cares about getting the reward for the mission, but this is a bit unexpected. Considering that Joseph's guardian recently passed away from an illness, forcing him to work for others and take care of the sheep to survive, he concludes that the treatment he's receiving is actually mild. Damien supposes that this village seems quite rational for a rural village in the middle of nowhere, but anyway, he will meet with them. Damien approaches one of the guards and greets him, catching him by surprise. The guard asks what brings him there, as he thought he was still talking to Albert, and Damien replies that they've already spoken and asks if Joseph is okay, to which the guard responds that he's as usual. Suddenly, both are startled by Joseph's desperate scream, begging them to open the door, as there's no time. The guard explains to the protagonist that it's normal. The shepherd keeps shouting as if he has infinite energy, and they're already getting tired of it. Hearing this, Damien concludes that there's not much time left and says that he would like to see Joseph, asking the guards to move aside for a moment. He prepares a punch and asks Joseph to move away from the door. The orphan asks who is there, while Damien is already throwing the punch. The blow easily breaks down the door, leaving the young man dumbfounded. The protagonist appears, asking if he is the famous Joseph they've been talking about. The young man falls to the ground, terrified, while Damien says he would like to ask a few questions, but smiling, he remembers that he hasn't introduced himself yet. He strikes a pose and says his name, saying he's a mercenary from the Adventurers Guild, and Bolota, on his shoulder, also introduces himself. The young orphan is shocked to hear a chick speaking and wonders what the heck is going on. After the introductions, they both sit down, and Damien says he heard that wolves have been hunting the sheep, which the shepherd promptly confirms, explaining that it was a huge wolf, much larger than a human, and when he saw it, it was hunting a bear. This leaves Damien intrigued, and he questions the idea of a wolf hunting a bear, but the young man insists again, saying that it's hard to believe, but true. Suddenly, one of the guards appears, telling the protagonist not to listen to the shepherd, as a wolf bigger than a human that hunts bears makes no sense. But Joseph retorts, insisting that he is telling the truth. Damien stands up and thinks to himself that it's not impossible, as there are all kinds of monsters and beasts in mountainous areas like those, and asks the boy where he saw the wolf. The young man elaborates that it was in the Caliph mountain peaks, where he saw a pack of them, and if Damien follows the peak and goes north, there's a large mountain at the end of the forest, so it won't be hard to find. The protagonist listens carefully to the words and says he understands. A system window then notifies that the mission, Wolves at Caliph Peak, has been created. Without wasting time, the protagonist heads there as fast as the wind, and, while running, says that it's really great to have good items, thinking about the full witch doctor item set he got using the Black Alliance book. He is also wearing the Flaming Lizard bracelet, which is high rank, along with the Feast of Flames, which creates flames for 30 seconds, causing constant damage to the opponent. Damien also wears the Nijawalu leather pants, also high rank, with various attribute boosts, increasing speed by 1 minute when casting spells, among other things. The Golden Rabbit sandals are also high rank, with many attribute enhancements and increasing the speed of movement by 10,000% with the first step. Still running, the protagonist reflects that good items like these can't just be bought with money. It took hundreds of thousands of coins to create them, and he had to use ingredients that aren't available in the market. However, from this point on, having good equipment will be very important. Moreover, the place he's heading to is full of monsters with levels above 30. Finally, Damien reaches the location, and soon the system notifies that the information has been updated. Caliph Mountain Peaks. The protagonist looks at the place, which seems quite challenging, and comments that it really looks like the kind of place where a pack's den would be. Upon further inspection, he notices that there are many blind spots due to all the rocks, and there are cliffs that seem very high. However, he spots a gap that seems too small for a wolf larger than a human to enter, and remembers that Joseph said he saw it with his own eyes. Damien then begins to prepare a skill, extends his hand, and uses his necromancy skill, creating several portals on the ground that emit a dense energy. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a young woman says they are close and tells everyone to be ready. This woman is the leader of the group, Seohi, who, accompanied by her team, continues marching. One of the group members asks if she is sure no one is there, and she replies that she hasn't read anything about anyone successfully invading that place, meaning no one has completed the mission yet. The man then gets excited, saying they will succeed, and his username is God of the Distance. Suddenly, he hears someone asking if they will really be able to defeat the Great Wolf King. The blonde turns around and answers that yes, that's why they are there, and the young man in the blue cape says that he's right, but he's heard that the beast is very strong. Then, he notices something when he looks up. It was the blonde acting like a hero, and telling the young man to stay calm because he's there, with lots of experience and good items. He places his hand on the young man's shoulder and emphasizes that it's not a scary monster because its powers are quite obvious, so the young man should just focus on healing the group. Another member warns them to keep moving if they don't want to be too late. He continues saying that while no one has succeeded there yet, it doesn't mean no one is trying, and there could be people with similar missions up there right now. The knight's nickname is Justice. God of the Distance, irritated, replies that he's too impatient. Justice also gets irritated and asks him to repeat what he said, but the blonde, scared, brushes it off, saying he was just talking to himself. Looking at Justice, he thinks about taking revenge later. The leader, already annoyed, says they can fight later, but now they need to focus. Just then, she sees something that shocks her. Several explosions occur right in front of them, making them cautious, and they deduce it's a fight. Meanwhile, one of Damien's chicks is dodging a fierce attack. They are surrounded by the enraged wolves, and the protagonist, like them, is also surrounded. However, Damien is excited and says there really are a lot of wolves, and it's not bad. Slowly, the wolves start to approach, and Damien didn't expect that, as there are many wolves coming out of small hideouts. Looking to the side, he notices one of them coming out of the den, and wonders if they live among those rocks. And if that's the case, the bottom of the cliff must be like an ant nest, but with wolves in this case. The tension in the environment rises, and he concludes that, despite there already being many wolves there must be even more down below. The wolves grow increasingly aggressive. The Caliph wolves, they reside in the Caliph mountain peaks, rarely act alone, and are usually in packs of 20 to 30, often hunting in groups of 5 to 6. Suddenly, one of the wolves jumps to attack, and the protagonist, realizing this, quickly starts preparing his skills. He attacks one of them, hitting it directly, and the wolf quickly falls, writhing in agony on the ground, while Damien concludes that it worked really well. A system window informs that the wolf's defense has fallen, and its vitality is slowly decreasing, causing the protagonist to reflect that the Flaming Lizard Bracelet and the Feast of Flame skill are perfect when combined with the Corrupt Elixir, as they both continue attacking the opponent's vitality. The system shows Damien's stats, which show that he is at level 34 and has various titles, with very good attributes considering the time spent in the game. Analyzing his stats, he concludes that at level 34, he should be able to handle the wolves on his own, especially with his good equipment. Damien possesses several items, such as the sashimi knife, the boar helmet, and the golden rabbit sandals. Suddenly, the wolves begin to approach again, but the protagonist notices. He turns with a sharp look and orders his soldiers to prepare for the attack. The wolves continue growling fiercely, showing no mercy. From atop a cliff, Bolota and an army of chicks begin to prepare for battle. However, the wolves soon hear Bolota instructing his soldiers to ready their weapons. At that, all the chicks take their slingshots, and out of nowhere, Damien raises a totem, saying that, as expected, it was worth every penny he invested. This totem is the Poison Dart Rooster from Bon Clay, a shield-type witch doctor class totem that comes with many attribute enhancements. The protagonist remembers moments earlier when he decided to use the Black Alliance book to turn the attack of all the chicks into level 10 poison dart attacks, and exclaims that there's no better item than this to deal with a group of enemies. With a confident stance, he says that obviously he could handle the wolves alone, but he's too lazy for that. He points at the wolves and says that, unfortunately, he can't let any of them live. Pointing his finger, he says bang. Immediately the chicks fire their slingshots, understanding their master's command, hitting all the wolves who couldn't react and poisoning them. Soon, multiple notifications appear saying that Damien has defeated the Caliph wolf, and the creatures begin to dissipate. The protagonist is impressed with the attack, and comments that he didn't expect to eliminate all the Caliph wolves without lifting a finger. The system shows the skill Fierce Impulse, which is currently at level 10, increasing attack speed and movement. He then uses the skill on the chicks, planning to compensate for their low levels and lack of attack power. Damien looks closely at the system, pondering that the skills he's mastered are Poison Needle Attack, the Corrupt Elixir, and Fierce Impulse. Initially, they were all very weak, or had huge penalties, but now they are quite useful, as they're at a high level. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he obtained a wolf canine. The chicks begin to carry various items for the protagonist, led by Bolota, who excitedly says that they managed to eliminate the canines. Damien also obtained a gray eye, and the chick then jumps to Damien's shoulder while he speaks, saying there should be an alpha somewhere, as Joseph mentioned seeing an enormous wolf there. He decides to check the mission again. The mission, which was normal type, required him to defeat 200 wolves, and he had only defeated 20, along with the Great Caliph Wolf, which still hadn't been found. After looking at the mission, He affirms that it will really be hard to exterminate all of them. But suddenly, a notification pops up saying that Chick 34 has died, leaving Damien confused. A huge shadow appears, and he looks back, realizing the Alpha has arrived. The enormous, furious wolf starts growling at the protagonist and soon begins howling, summoning the pack. A notification appears, warning Damien to prepare for the pack's ambush, which quickly arrives aggressively. The protagonist is surprised by the situation, as he didn't expect so many at once, while Balota asks what they should do. The system informs about the Great Wolf King, who is the ruler of the Caliph Mountain Peaks, and seems to have grown large due to unknown causes. He is of the beast species, elite type, and level 45. Surrounded by the pack, Damien immediately activates Fierce Impulse and says he will have to try. With a serious look, he emphasizes that he will handle the big one, while Bolota deals with the lackeys. He yells for his army of chicks to prepare. Bolota orders everyone to get into position, waving a flag, and they quickly grab their slingshots. The chief chick then gives the command to shoot, which they immediately obey. The Alpha looks up and notices the needle attack, while Damien prepares with his sashimi knife, thinking that now the lackeys won't be a problem. He focuses on his target and, with his golden rabbit sandals, charges at an absurd speed. Activating the golden light flash, he swiftly bypasses all the smaller wolves and leaps toward the Alpha, who was still searching for Damien below, having lost track of him due to the speed at which he moved. Just as the Alpha lifts its head, it notices the protagonist above it, preparing to strike. Damien activates his skill, Green Blessing, which increases casting speed by 100% and mana regeneration by 100%. He figures that will be enough and feels that he can do anything in this situation. Suddenly, a notification warns that the Great Wolf King has decided that he is the most threatening enemy. With the wolf's furious glare, he is also warned to be cautious of the beast's attack, which fiercely tries to strike, but Damien manages to dodge. He leaps, using the wolf as a trampoline, and while hovering in the air, prepares his elixir, saying he'll have to melt its skin first. He fires the attack, hitting the wolf squarely, and it immediately begins to burn. The system notifies that the beast's defense has weakened, and its defense power has decreased. The protagonist lands on the ground and, observing the beast writhing, reflects that something's wrong, as the Great Wolf King should be an elite-type monster and should either use an attack or defense skill or command the pack to act. Despite this, Damien draws his knife and concludes that he shouldn't worry too much, as he's dealt enough damage to kill it before it can use any skills. He then displays his blade, confidently stating that he will finish this as quickly as possible. The protagonist observes the beast's movements carefully, prepared to strike, considering the action pattern. He assumes the beast's power is likely attack or leadership type, but in any case, he'll have to end it. He jumps and moves forward to strike, determined, and looking down, concludes that he won't need to worry about the lackeys. He focuses solely on the Alpha and delivers an attack with all his power against the beast, which howls from the damage. Nearby, Seohi asks what that was. The whole group watches the battle nearby. The young support with a hood says there's something there, and the Justice asks if the monsters are fighting each other. They look more closely and realize something is moving in the mist, and the Justice asks if someone got there before them, while God of the Distance grows tense, asking what's going on. Seohi says it's probably not a player, as the mission only appeared recently, and they left early in the morning, which the group's support agrees with, adding that it's probably just monsters fighting over territory. The group leader, still a little nervous, says it's not too late and asks the healer if his buffing skill is ready, warning everyone to prepare for battle. Suddenly, the healer quickly points ahead, shouting that the mist is disappearing, and they all look, unable to believe what they're seeing. It was Damien fighting the furious monster alone. They're all stunned, and the Justice yells, asking if he's really fighting the Great Wolf King by himself. Before anyone could say anything, God of the Distance runs off, shouting that he'll try to land the final blow on the beast to claim the experience for himself. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, Damien is still trying to eliminate the beast, which refuses to fall, despite taking heavy damage. The protagonist pauses for a moment and thinks that this was to be expected from a territory boss, and despite using all possible skills against the monster, he's still at half health. Suddenly, the enraged wolf charges quickly, but as it leaps to attack, the protagonist rolls to the side, evading the strike. Seeing that the beast is growing increasingly furious, he deduces that it's becoming harder to dodge, as the wolf is getting closer. He decides to switch to a ranged weapon. The wolf, even wounded, continues its relentless assault on the protagonist, who skillfully dodges and shoots at the beast with his slingshot. Damien concludes that attacking from a distance is much easier, but he must be cautious since he still doesn't know what powers the animal possesses. As he looks at the wolf, which is badly wounded, he notices it's looking somewhere else. Suddenly, the monster howls with immense power, echoing throughout the valley, making the protagonist wonder what's happening. Quickly, eyes appear from all sides, and before he realizes it, he's surrounded by numerous wolves. Before Damien can react, the wolves start attacking him and manage to bite him all over. Soon, the system alerts that he is in an abnormal status and suffering from bleeding. Fallen to the ground with his vision blurred, Damien begins to tremble, seeing the giant wolf in front of him. The system continues to warn that he's suffering from muscle rupture and that his vitality is dropping below normal levels, suggesting that he should log out. Still being mauled by the beasts, Damien then accepts that his life ends here. He clasps his hands as his body transforms, and suddenly, all the beasts attacking him are reduced to minced meat, leaving the alpha on high alert. The protagonist then gets up, and a system window informs about zombification. Damien, already accustomed to it, begins walking calmly. The system notifies that zombification has been activated, with 599 seconds remaining. The alpha remains undeterred and assumes an attack position, growling, while Damien, in a dark tone, says that the noisy dog is done for because zombification hurts a lot. He continues walking toward the beast, pointing his finger, and comments that it's been a while since he's felt so much pain, while one of the wolves from the pack lurks behind. The wolf jumps to try a surprise attack and manages to bite the protagonist's arm. Annoyed, Damien grabs the wolf by the neck and says he's going to exterminate any canine in that valley. He throws the wolf to the ground with such force that the earth shakes all the way to Rio de Janeiro. Immediately, the wolf is eliminated. Damien activates his plague aura, which inflicts debuffs on opponents within a 3-meter radius, and, in a gesture of preparing for a fight, orders the wolf to fall so he can fight it, or he'll go to the monster. Meanwhile, near the battle, the dynamic young man continues running and wonders about the weapon Damien is using, concluding that he can't leave without gaining anything from the place. He can't accept that and keeps running. When he looks ahead, he sees Damien, zombified, crushing the monster with his bare hands and wonders what the hell that is. The protagonist delivers his mercy strike to the alpha wolf's neck, and suddenly, the system informs that he has defeated the Great Wolf King. Damien celebrates his victory, while the system notifies that he gained experience and leveled up, reaching level 36. Another notification informs that he obtained Jungle Essence, a large canine, and the wolf's head leather. Damien looks at all the items, proud of having eliminated the beast, while more notifications appear saying he obtained the Heresy token and completed the mission Wolves of Caliph Mountain. Now, he must return to Caliph Village and find Chief Albert to receive the rewards. The protagonist picks up the item Jungle Essence and contemplates, happy that he obtained a high-value material. It was definitely worth it. He sits down on the ground, thinking that his level also increased significantly, largely thanks to the chicks handling the other wolves, concluding that they were quite useful. As he decides to return, he suddenly notices something. An arrow strikes him, piercing his wrist. He looks at the projectile and wonders if it's a bolt from a crossbow, thinking they were aiming for his head. It doesn't seem to have been shot from a distance, and since he didn't notice the shooter, it must be someone very strong. Annoyed, he tells the shooter to show themselves while he's still being nice, and the shooter appears, saying that he has good reflexes. It was the player god of the distance, who, pointing his weapon at him, orders him to stay still unless he wants to meet Jesus up close. Damien removes the object from his wrist and asks who the hell the guy is. The two stare at each other for a moment, and the protagonist recognizes the young man's weapon, which is identical to the one used by the guys from the Jungsan startup. Considering the crossbow and the 2 wrist crossbows, he must be an archer class. Standing up, he deduces that the guy is more agile than destructive, so he won't be a difficult opponent. The blonde, still pointing at Damien, emphasizes that he told him not to move, and it's better for him to obey. The protagonist gives a thumbs up, thinking that he was right. The guy is faster than he thought, and he must be at least level 30. His gear is also 1 or 2 levels higher than the guys from Jungsan. The young man says he did ask him to stay still, and suddenly, the system announces that the zombification effect has ended, deactivating immediately. Damien notices that his opponent was waiting for the zombification to end, and he's definitely a clever guy. The young man comments that he doesn't know how Damien managed to eliminate the Great Wolf King, but it's not easy to kill a boss being a close-range fighter, which is impressive. Already irritated, the protagonist asks what he wants, and the young man retorts, asking if Damien really doesn't know what he wants. With a strange smile, he comments that the protagonist made him waste time and effort because that wolf was supposed to be his, and demands all the equipment and items Damien earned, if he wants to stay alive. The protagonist quickly refuses, leaving the young man furious and incredulous. Damien asks if he looks crazy enough to just hand over the items he worked so hard to get for free. Trembling with rage, God of the Distance tells Damien to go to hell, while the protagonist calmly says he can't hear him. The adventurer then fires his crossbows, shouting for Damien to screw off. This was exactly the protagonist's plan, and he concludes that his provocation worked, activating Fierce Impulse, increasing his attack and movement speed by 200%. The system notifies that the effect duration is 177 seconds. Knowing this, he quickly prepares, thinking of using a healing option and activating Green Blessing and Feast of Flames. God of the Distance's attacks hit the spot where Damien was, but he manages to dodge while drinking his healing potion, planning to make sure to use his buffing skills while Fierce Impulse is still active. He needs to focus while his opponent is still in shock. After drinking the potion, he throws the vial away and notices that his opponent's pattern is very simple. He reloads every 10 seconds and takes 1 to 2 seconds between each shot. Definitely predictable. God of the Distance continues firing relentlessly, while the protagonist skillfully dodges, making him frustrated for not landing a single shot. Shocked, he also notices that Damien has been staring at him the entire time with a strange look. He continues firing and tells himself that he's going to lose the fight this way and needs to. Suddenly, the protagonist appears right in front of him, with an elixir in hand, saying that he can see all the attacks. Damien manages to hit the young man with his corrupt elixir, which explodes upon impact, causing God of the Distance to fall to the ground poisoned, thinking that the damage seems less than he expected. Then, the system informs him about his abnormal status and that his character is suffering from poisoning. He starts screaming in disbelief as the poison spreads. A notification alerts that his armor has been corroded, causing its durability to decrease. Sitting on the ground, he tries to understand what's happening, while Damien continues to advance to attack. He notices this, and reflects if he was mistaken in deducing that this guy was a close-range player. Before he could think of anything else, Damien was already in front of him, preparing another attack and saying he was going to soak the enemy with poison again, and that the guy would go to the ground if he didn't manage to block that attack. He fires the elixir again, causing the young man's armor to corrode, and the young man suffers from burns. God of the Distance screams in agony from pain all over his body and is alerted that his elite wrist crossbow has been destroyed. On all fours, like a dog, while agonizing, he hears Damien asking if he's ready to say goodbye. Hearing this, he becomes furious and tries to react, pulling his crossbow from his back and saying, with determination, that he will turn the protagonist into a sieve. Damien recognizes the weapon, which is a hunter's heavy crossbow, and, if he remembers correctly, one of the beginner rankers used to carry one of those. He didn't expect to bump into a weapon focused solely on destructive power here. Damien asks if God of the Distance is sure he wants to do that, questioning whether an archer like him, whose best skill is speed, can even use that. The blonde becomes enraged, thinking that the protagonist won't keep up that arrogance for long. He prepares and shoots an arrow that narrowly grazes Damien's neck, and he comments that it really came close. But suddenly, the projectile creates a colossal explosion in the sky, catching the protagonist's attention. Enraged, Damien reflects that this is very different from the heavy crossbow he knows, and neither he nor the system can identify it. While he's thinking, God of the Distance moves like smoke, smiling, and asks where he's looking. Damien then turns around, and an explosion strikes the place where he was, but he manages to dodge in time. The archer appears elsewhere and mocks the protagonist, saying that he's running like a lost chicken and smiling, asks what he thinks about not being able to see his movements. The protagonist focuses and reflects that this isn't an invisibility cloak or a potion, since there isn't an alchemist that advanced yet, so it must be an exclusive skill. God of the Distance begins walking toward Damien, saying that he should have cut him instead of punching, and that he'll regret it. The protagonist retorts, saying that the archer talks too much, and the archer concludes that this won't be a problem, as Damien won't hear him anymore once he's eliminated. Quickly, he disappears and reappears in another spot, and with a dark expression says, asking the protagonist to try to endure longer, if he can. Suddenly, the system identifies the skill Shadow Hunter and the invisible type bow, but the archer resumes his attack, causing explosions throughout the area while Damien tries to escape. Observing his movements, the protagonist realizes that the invisible type bow allows him to stay invisible while rolling on the ground, and Shadow Hunter has the passive Hunt's Beginning. That's a problem, because these skills allow him to use the hunter's heavy crossbow much faster. Damien looks back and concludes that the solution is to end this quickly, while the archer keeps shooting and mocking. Suddenly, The protagonist jumps and, using his golden rabbit sandals, activates the golden lightning skill, charging at the archer as fast as lightning, with everything he's got. Damien passes by him and rips off a chunk of the blonde's beard, making him scream in pain. He turns around, furious, and asks why the hell he did that, calling him a psychopath. With a serious tone, the protagonist says he'll give him one last chance to apologize, and he better think wisely. The archer, enraged, asks if he's crazy and why he would apologize to him, emphasizing that he thinks. Suddenly, he feels an intense sharp pain, and breathing heavily says that his heart is failing, while Damien holds a voodoo doll in his hand, smiling and saying he likes the effects. With a toothpick, he stabs the doll's arm, making God of the Distance immediately feel the pain, and with a strange expression, the shaman asks what he thinks of that. Meanwhile, the group watches all the dust from the battle, and Seohi comments that the archer has been shooting incessantly and is no longer seeing anything, asking what the group thinks. The healer says he's not sure, as everything went quiet now. Suddenly, they hear a chilling scream. A system window shows God of the Distance's vitality, which is at half, and Seohi comments that it's dropping very quickly. The vitality continues to decrease, and the group, in shock, wonders what's happening, commenting that at this rate, he will soon succumb. The group leader says she will check, and the justice responds that she should think carefully about that, but she retorts, saying she can't just stand there watching the archer lose his life. The knight ponders the mental state of his companion, as God of the Distance isn't weak enough to be easily eliminated by another player, and if his vitality is dropping so fast, it means the other player must be extremely powerful. Back to the fight, a system screen appears warning that hostility from an unknown user has been detected, unable to measure the alignment, which makes Damien intrigued. The system also warns that it's a dangerous user and that he should be cautious. Meanwhile, the justice is telling Seohi that her action is irresponsible, as the other user killed the Great Wolf King alone, but she interrupts him, telling him to prepare for battle. With her sword in hand, but showing signs of nervousness, she asks the healer to assist them as well. Ahead, God of the Distance agonizes in pain and writhes, wondering what the hell Damien did to his body. Showing the voodoo doll, the protagonist asks if he's curious about the reason for all that pain, and with a bizarre look, he explains that he used the fur he collected for the doll to cast a spell on him, and everything he does to the doll immediately reflects on the archer. He takes the doll's arm and says he'll demonstrate, adding that if he breaks the doll's arm, suddenly, he bends the doll's arm, instantly breaking the young man's arm, causing him to scream in pain. Damien continues asking if he should try something else and, with a devilish smile, asks what God of the Distance thinks will happen if he strikes there. The archer is terrified by the idea and desperately begs him to stop. On his knees, he begs for forgiveness, saying he'll do anything the protagonist asks. Still with the devilish expression and his finger ready to snap the doll, Damien says, "Goodbye." As soon as the strike lands, the archer immediately faints and begins shaking, foaming at the mouth. Damien, watching this, comments that it wasn't even funny, as he passed out immediately. He crouches down and checks God of the Distance's vital signs, saying that he can't die yet, as his vitality hasn't hit 0. Suddenly, he hears someone telling him to stop, and when he turns, he sees the group quickly approaching, with Seohi asking Damien to step away from the archer. In a hurry, they reach the fallen young man, and Seohi checks that he hasn't passed away yet. Damien, analyzing the group, thinks that, considering their equipment, they are roughly at an intermediate level and seem to be somehow connected to that archer. Then, he realizes that the young man's confidence is because he was expecting his group to arrive. Damien then asks if they are from the same group. Suddenly, a window notifies that the alignment of the unknown user is unable to be measured, making the protagonist uneasy. Looking back, he sees the woman pointing her sword at him, telling her group to prepare for battle. The system informs that she considers him an enemy, and warns him to be aware of the penalties in case of elimination. Damien starts sweating cold, wondering what the meaning of this is, and deduces that they have figured out his alignment, making the situation unfavorable for him. A window alerts that the effect of green blessing is wearing off, leaving him apprehensive. More alerts appear, saying that stamina and mana regeneration are paused. He reflects that he used many resources during the fight, and needs to stall for a while until the skill returns. He quickly asks the woman to calm down, suggesting they talk first. But she screams, telling him to shut up, and asks how many users he has eliminated so far. Damien then says that's enough, making the woman even more nervous, while he says that it was her group member who was wrong, as he came demanding all the items that the Great Wolf dropped, along with all the equipment. The protagonist concludes by emphasizing that his actions are well justified, considering what he did. Everyone in the group should take responsibility too, unless the group sent the archer to attack him. Seohye asks what he's talking about, saying they're not that kind of people. Suddenly, a scream is heard. It's the archer who stands up and points at the protagonist. Damien notices that it was a mini arrow, and God of the Distance fires it, leaving the protagonist in shock, thinking he won't be able to dodge. But suddenly, the archer is eliminated, leaving Seohye surprised, while the healer points to the side. The system informs that the user God of the Distance has logged off and alerts Damien that he has eliminated another player. He looks at the voodoo doll with a toothpick stuck in its chest and says that he didn't want to do that. Another system window shows that his alignment has decreased by 1 and is now the same as his bank account, unable to decrease further. Seohye screams, saying that she knew he would use the spells to finish him off, and she planned to do that from the start. The healer adds that Damien shouldn't even consider himself human. The voodoo doll disappears from the protagonist's hand, and he explains that it wasn't intentional. Before he could explain further, Seohye charges at him, saying there's no more to talk about. As she approaches to strike, she says that Damien can apologize when he's in hell. The protagonist starts putting on his boar mask, thinking that he has no choice and will have to fight, but at least his vitality and skills have been recovered. With all his skills active, Damien prepares for combat, and says that they started this so they can't beg for their lives later. And, as he sets up his strike against Seohye, the healer casts a skill called Axelethio, buffing his companion's sword, which emits a bright glow, blocking Damien's powerful attack. He can't believe it, and wonders how that thin sword was able to block his heavy strike. While Seohye says that it's a disappointment that he's going around exterminating other users with that useless skill, Damien steps back after attempting the attack. Seohye tells the healer to cast all the buffs. Immediately, he begins casting all the abilities: Divine Aura, Restoration, and Glorious Light, making his companions even stronger and more prepared. Damien observes this and thinks that with all those buffs, he won't have a chance to win unless he takes out the healer first. But before he could do anything, the leader charges quickly, with her chest puffed up and her sword ready, striking several blows against the protagonist, who tries to defend as best as he can, thinking that he didn't expect her to be so experienced with a sword. Meanwhile, the healer continued buffing the justice with Strength of Solidarity, Weight Reduction, and Shield of Trust, which Damien slightly notices. While Seohye relentlessly attacked him, he thought it would be very difficult if both of them were buffed, so he only had one option. The leader notices something while attacking. It was the protagonist, preparing to throw one of his potions. Quickly, he shoots the artifact to the ground, creating a small explosion. Soon, a mist begins to rise, leaving everyone in the group confused, asking where the boar went. And suddenly, he appears behind Seohye with his sashimi knife in hand and says, "Hi." Pointing the blade and smiling, Damien says that she walked right into the trap.